Hello again, friends, and you are our friends, and welcome back to another edition of Jim Cornette's Drive Thru right here on this beautiful afternoon, wherever it is that you are, sitting in your house. Perhaps you have a day bed. Perhaps you're in your bed. Boy, I already broke him up. It was early. I am your host, the great Brian Lass, and the man who'll be answering your questions, the exalted one of the cult of Cornette, Mr. Jim Cornette.
A fucking daybed. Daybed better than the night bed. Oh.
You know, you've been throwing out more Always Sunny in Philadelphia quotes lately. I mean, I knew you watched it. I had no idea that you watched it to the extent that you...
Just, the Dayman is my favorite episode. What has it, master of kung fu and friendship for everyone? Dayman. Ho, ho, ho. Anyway, finish telling, now that you've just fucked with me and everything, finish telling people what we're doing here today.
One of the things that we do here is we answer your questions sent in to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com or on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru. And of course, as always, we have tons of questions. I think they're coming in more and more each week. It's almost like orders to Cornette's Collectibles. Hundreds and hundreds of questions.
Don't jump ahead to the plug already.
We're getting a lot of questions is the point.
We're getting a lot of questions. I don't know it to be true, but a lot of people saying it. Is that what you're saying to me?
That is what I'm saying to you, and it's true.
And it's true. Well, that's even a bonus when you say something that is indeed true. Can I say fuck yet? Have we got far enough into this thing? No, since you mentioned Cornette's Collectibles, I will let people know that, yes, we did mention this past week on the experience that the spike in orders led to, unfortunately, exceeding the capacity that I have to sign my name over and over again and ship shit out. And so we are flattening the curve with internet distancing. Today is Monday, April 27th of the fine year 2021. Is that correct?
No, it is actually 2020.
No,
sorry,
I was going to say 2020 should be canceled. We're just going straight to 2021. That was going to be another bit, but it was on my... Anyway, so it's April 27th of 2020. On Friday, May 1st of 2020 at jimcornette.com, for the first time ever, we are temporarily closing the store to flatten the curve and to fill everybody's orders. Everyone has been so generous. Over the last month or so, we just got slammed. We got so far behind. We talked about it on the experience. Do I hire some stooge to come to my house, spread disease, and forge my name? Do I raise the prices and gouge people in time of a pandemic when they're looking for their wrestling entertainment? No, I think not. So we're stopping down. The website will still be up. I didn't want anybody to think I'm absconding with their money. Everybody's going to get their orders filled. It's just going to take us a little while to muddle through this. So we are closing the store for catch-up and restocking everything that we can possibly restock, and to once again offer timely service as well as quality merchandise. So May 1st through 15th, you won't be able to order. Or 1st through 14th. We come back the 15th. I hope that's as clear as I can possibly make it. But we thank everybody for their support, and we're still sending it. I'm sending out stuff every day. It's not like I'm just waiting. As a matter of fact, this morning, another give or take 200 or so packages went winging their way. As the people hear this, it's Monday, went winging their way to the various customers out there. And thank God, I'm speaking in advance, but Bree came back from her vacation, I hope. And I told you, they're down now. They can't have clerks working at all the windows because they wouldn't be 6 feet away from each other. So they can only have 2 of the 4 windows operating at any one time, and I go in there and hold one of them up for an hour every morning.
Now, I went into the post office yesterday as we're recording, and they have tape on the ground now to keep the customers 6 feet apart.
Yes,
so you can only get, there's a couple of people at the counter, and then there's 2 customers in there, and then everyone else has to line up in the lobby going out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, by the time I got finished the other day, there was a line all the way back through the lobby to the post office boxes because everybody's 6 feet apart. Either that or then people come in and they'll stand in the doorway like 12 or 15 feet away from the next person because they're scared to come in. And then they start lining up out in the parking lot until they have to say, would you please just come inside? Just come inside and turn to the right.
Is everyone wearing a mask down there? Is Kentucky requiring it? No. Wow.
No, well, I mean, I've just been doing it because our Governor Andy, he should be reading the kids the Sunday comics over the radio by the fireside. This guy he's getting high marks everywhere. He's a Democrat, obviously, because he's intelligent. And he is, tried to stress all these measures and has daily updates and has really mobilized the state, et cetera. But you get young people coming in wearing masks and gloves and shit. You get old people coming in just pawing all over shit, just leaning on the counter, punching on the fucking keypad, no mask. The prime candidates to, a one-way trip to Boot Hill off this thing, and they're just walking out and about, and they come in to buy stamps. Do you have any flag stamps? Yes. You go ahead and lick them. You're doing everything else you can to get the fucking shit. So it just depends. A lot of people, I never saw a human being on the streets in the state of Kentucky wearing a mask until about, 3 weeks ago. And now, but it's still only about 50-50. And that's why I'm just not going outside, because I'm not going outside without wearing a mask. Well, I don't say outside in my fucking yard, yes, but I mean out in public. But I hate these fucking masks. It's like wearing a gag. If I put it over my nose, my glasses fog up. I can't fucking talk properly because, I'm animated. And also, it's other people's masks hinder me with my substandard hearing. Sometimes in loud areas, I go on a little lip reading and a little hearing both. And now I got one of those. So I'm always saying, what? Say that again? Like fucking grandpa. And then if you're talking, wearing that fucking mask, I find they get soggy. And then they start tasting and smelling something like a wet Dalmatian when you put it back on again the next day to go back out to the post office. So I will not be in public anywhere but the post office until it's safe for everybody not to wear a fucking mask. If that's forever, I'm willing to live with that.
And once again, let's all show a little bit of support for the wonderful people at the U.S. Postal Service who do such a great job.
Yes.
Well, we have a fine edition of the Drive Thru here this week, Jim.
As a matter of fact, I just... Folks, if you're like me and you're just mad because there's a lot of stupid people in the world that piss you off and you need somebody to talk to and you don't have a podcast, because I can talk to all of you. I can talk to all of you guys and vent my frustrations at the fact that people have always been this stupid in this country. We just didn't have Twitter and the president didn't acknowledge them. But my frustrations, I vent to you. If you don't have a vent, we got one for you. The folks at BetterHelp. Now more than ever, Brian, we've been talking about the folks at BetterHelp. If you need somebody to talk to, because it doesn't have to be it can be a serious family issue or a serious crisis. If you just need somebody to talk to and say, hey, I'm going out of my mind because I'm watching TV from the sanity and saneness of my own home and the whole world is crazy and it's frustrating me. And it's pissing me off and I can't sleep at night because it's stressing me out, then you can still call BetterHelp because it's a professional counseling service. You don't have to show up and risk your life going out in public or going to a therapist's office or somebody you might know or somebody you can't find. You can do it anonymously but professionally and online with BetterHelp. And if you just want to talk about the fact that everybody else in the world sucks except you, and it's driving you crazy, I think they would take that too, don't you think?
Yeah, I think they'll talk to anyone who needs help right now, including any postal workers who have a guy coming in with hundreds of packages
each and
every day.
hey, I treat them with the utmost respect. Anyway, don't have to sit in a germ-ridden waiting room. Don't have to search to find the right person in your rural community. You can now go to BetterHelp.com and join the over 800,000 people taking charge of their mental health with the health of an experienced help. A healthy, experienced professional will help you. That's what will happen. And if you go to BetterHelp.com/drive, you can get 10% off your first month. I think that's something that we all need is a little fucking... I was going to talk about this on The Experience this week, and I still will, but I think we all need somebody to talk to or some kind of therapy when we are living in a country where the major manufacturers of Lysol and bleach have to tell people out loud in a written statement and verbally not to drink or ingest their products. We all need to talk to somebody. That's how he got there. That's how he got there.
Well, we'll talk about that interesting milestone in this country's history on The Experience this week, but we have lots and lots and lots of questions that have been sent in to either CornyDriveThru@gmail.com or on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru. And let's get to our first one right now, Jim. This was sent in on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru from Mark in Dryden. Did Jim catch the Triple H 25th anniversary segment on SmackDown? If so, your thoughts on the entire segment, or how about just when Vince showed up?
You've been chomping at the bit. I know you have, salivating, drooling even, because you made me watch it. I didn't want to do it. And then I said, do we really have to talk about it? He said, well, I mean, if we run short of questions. And then just right off the tip, I don't want to, I don't mind knocking Triple H and Michaels for I don't understand what they were doing unless they were just tickling themselves. That's what two guys sitting around say, oh, we ought to do this. Yeah, we ought to do that. Or riding in the car. Yeah, we can do that and that, but not really to actually do it. Even if I'm sure some people, I loved the self-deprecating nature of the segment where Triple H, as played by Paul Levesque, actually made fun of his own character because there's that element out there in the wrestling community these days. But in what fucking world of a wrestling promoter's mind does it make sense even to make one of your legendary fucking iconic wrestlers look like a fucking dipshit and have him and his friend out there doing funny haha with each other with nobody there to laugh, so it's even less funny than if a few fans were tickled by it because they were working with him. They made, whether you like him or not, it made Triple H, and then the people just said, well, fuck, yeah, he did get the shit kicked out of him all the time. He didn't get beat all the time. And maybe he wasn't as good as we thought he was. The whole segment was geared towards skewering him, and he was going along with it. Am I too old-fashioned, Brian?
It is funny when they showed the montage of people beating him at WrestleMania. It did get me thinking. The two guys he did defeat at WrestleMania, of course, were the WCW guys, Sting and Booker T.
So I didn't understand that part. I don't think Michael's nearly half as funny as he thinks he is. But then when Vince came, I haven't seen Vince in a while. When was the last time Vince was on television? Well, at least on a television show that we reviewed or watched or have talked about here. It's been a while, right?
I don't know if he's been on any of the shows we've reviewed in the last 6 months. I could be wrong, but I don't remember. The last thing I remember with him was the XFL announcement, which is a while ago.
Well, and even I don't know, maybe once again, because that's where there was a press conference, there's people around, whatever the case. No, I have never felt sorry for Vince McMahon before. But it's not like I think he's on the verge of death, right? I'm not saying that. I'm saying Vince looks old and human for the first time. And he looks like his dad, the old picture of his dad on the cover when his dad was gray-haired and facially. I mean, he didn't command the room. He didn't have the voice. He is not 6'3" anymore. It doesn't look like. He didn't slay it as a performer. He didn't. He made Joe Biden sound like the fucking Federal Express guy. You know, he didn't come to a point well. He didn't have those sly inflections. He seemed like he was out of breath doing the promo. That's the first time I've ever seen Vince where he looked like, in person or on television, where he looked like a normal human being that could age and get old and you know, he's off his game.
I actually heard from someone who's a former WWE employee, and I'll stress employee, not a wrestler, someone who worked in the office, and they had not seen Vince in a while, and I hadn't been watching, and then I went and sought out the clip after I heard from this person, and they said, is Vince sick? He can't stand up straight, and it looks like he's out of breath. And I said, oh, you know, that's surprising they would air that. And then I saw it, and I said, wow, he does not look well.
Well, I mean, the part about Stan is I mean, he had the quads torn. He's had, you know, issues. I would assume when he started taking bumps off top of cages when he was 60 or whatever, that probably didn't do him any good. You know, but he just, he didn't have the energy. He wasn't Vince. And yes, Vince would exaggerate his mannerisms and his voice, and he would exaggerate everything about him when he was on television, but it was all still shit that Vince did for real if you were around him for any length of time in person. And he's one of those guys that you don't ever expect to get old or be different or not, you know, or just be human. And, you know, I felt bad because, I mean, he's almost 80. How old is he now? 76? You're doing math with your fingers and your toes?
I was actually looking up what his age is.
Oh, cheating, eh?
I don't remember what year he was born.
You know, he is... So, I mean, you know, when you think about it, he looks great for your normal fucking 75 or 80-year-old fucking guy, but
he's 74.
Vince, 74. Okay, for your normal 75-year-old guy, I think he looks pretty fucking good. But it didn't look like they left the hanger in his suit jacket. Like, that's what I was used to say. It looks, every time Vince walks out, it looks like they left the hanger in his fucking coat. Because his shoulders are just back and the whole thing, I know if he's still breathing, he's still training, but he's lost some size, but obviously wouldn't you? But it just, no, man, he looked, and everything he said at one point when he started telling a story, and it sounded like your uncle at Christmas when he wanders off in the middle of, not wanders off verbally in the middle of, I remember one time, and he's, you know, in Birmingham was one of my better towns. He just, Vince was human there, and that's shocking to see.
You know, it's interesting when you take that Vince and you think about all the stories we've heard in recent months about guys wanting to get out of the WWE, and Vince pitches them on ideas and says, you know, oh, it's such good shit, or tries to convince them that an idea is good, or at times maybe even dances to music that he wants them to take with a new gimmick to show them how good the music is. I mean, it's not 55-year-old Vince, it's this Vince.
Yeah, well, you know, and 55-year-old Vince could get away with that because he could, as Christine Jarrett used to say, he could say the glasses off your own face. He could talk you into anything. And you had to kind of laugh when he was dancing with it. Remember I told you a story when he made Too Cold Scorpio Flash Funk and they sent him out on a dark match just to, see what he was doing. And they didn't have music for him yet. So I had driven to that taping and I had my cassette tapes in the car. I said, I got Rick James. Okay, so he came out to Love Gun, but they started playing it. Vince was walking out and he does the fucking strut and the dance and the whole nine thing to Love Gun all the way to the ring. It exists somewhere in the WWE library off a dark match of Too Cold Scorpio's first Flash Funk appearance. But this one, no, I can understand why. Because that's something also you never heard of guys actively trying as hard the last couple of years to get out of their deals, as with some exceptions. I mean, Brett or whatever the fuck, that whole saga. Because Vince could always talk him into it. And that has been strange that the last couple of years he has not been able to talk people into some things. And this Vince I can understand.
Any other thoughts about the ending of the segment or any other thoughts about the Triple H 25th anniversary? What do you think about 25 years of Triple H?
Okay, well, first of all, the ending of the segment when he walked off and did the exaggerated, but that was inside. They were doing inside stuff with each other. Inside family stuff and, et cetera. They showed that on television, right? This was not just it
was the lowest rated Fox SmackDown yet.
On Fox, they showed this.
Yes.
I was going to say it wasn't just for like NXT or the website or whatever. They showed that on Fox. Okay, nobody got it. And nobody was, I don't think, touched by it, except people that are already wanting to be touched by anything that's touching about Triple H. Those people were touched. Most people were not touched. If they were touched inappropriately by that segment. Well, Triple H, he's had a longer run than almost anybody else in the WWE, but he has, of course, the familial advantage, as we've talked about. It's not like he's sucking or doing a bad job at anything, but he's not going to get fired anyway. So I can understand why, depending on how long he lives, he has another 30 years or more until he looks like Vince of being with the WWE. So I think a bigger accomplishment is probably Taker, that he lasted this long without, actually being married to the family. But congratulations, 25 happy years, almost like the Mickey Mouse anniversary. 25 happy years with the mouse ears. Why did they, instead of doing something nice for him in a cool video and whatever, why did they go for just his friend roasting him and then Vince coming out and not really being very good?
Some of the choices they've made
they didn't do anything. This was not just like the rib you showed me. There was not like a real ceremony where they put him over in a big video and all the accomplishments. And then Shawn Michaels said, this was just it.
No, that was it. That was what aired on TV.
All right. Okay. Well, they came up with something on the sperm of the moment, didn't they?
What'd you think of Stephanie calling Shawn Michaels, what'd you say, a cross-eyed idiot?
Oh, no, you lazy-eyed. And he hung up on. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's two guys came up with that like they would on a car ride. Yeah, we can do this or we can do that. She could say, but they really did it on national network television in front of people. And unfortunately not in front of people, but in front of viewers at home. So even if they were laughing, you couldn't hear a comedy. By the way, Bill Maher, I think, has found out you can't do a fucking monologue with no audience. It falls flatter than a fucking plate full of piss. And that's exactly what they did. If Bill Maher can't do it, Triple H and Shawn Michaels can't do it.
Well, 25 years of Triple H. If only there was a way to celebrate 25 years of Triple H and remember the past and look at photo after photo of 25 years of the evolution of Triple H.
Well, thank you very much, because you would indeed see the evolution of what the higher priced fucking genetic supplements can do for you. Or you can just get a Skylight frame, ladies and gentlemen. If you get a Skylight frame, then you can put pictures of your family, friends, loved ones, significant other, pets. Doesn't have to just be Triple H in this frame. It can be people you actually like and want to look at on a regular basis. We've been talking about these since everybody's quarantined once again, or people can't be in the, nursing homes or senior living facilities around their parents or grandparents, or you can't fly. So therefore, people in New York can't visit with family in California. This is the next best thing. You get the Skylight frame. It's not just a frame for a picture. I at first thought that, and well, that'll be good. I'll get a frame. But no. It's a frame for thousands of pictures, millions of pictures. The pictures can change willy-nilly at the drop of an email, because the Skylight frame's set up in like a minute. Everybody in the world but me will know how to do this. You plug it in, you use the touch screen, and then you can email pictures to it. So you can send a frame to your mother or your grandmother, whatever, and you can email them pictures of all the people that they can't see in person for the next however long. And it's almost instantaneous. They look good in the house. I've got mine sitting here with pictures, and I could even do a slideshow because it holds all kinds of pictures. So you can just swipe them back and forth of little Harley Quinn from the time she was a puppy until now, sort of like Triple H, only she's cute. From the time she was a puppy until modern day, you could do it even with children. They won't be as cute as the dogs, but you can do it with children. Anyway, and you gave one to your dad, or are giving one to your dad for Father's Day. Well, because it hadn't come up yet, but this is your intention, is what you're saying.
That's right. He'll be getting one in June, but we're enjoying the one we have here in the house right now, and we're probably going to be getting a second one for the ground floor of the house.
Well, because it's so much trouble, it's a pain in the ass to just walk down there and look at your fucking frame.
No, it's because the one here on the executive floor is all the way up here. So it's worth getting another one for everyone who's not allowed on the executive floor.
When the kids get in the elevator, do they have to have a key card to fucking let them up to the executive floor?
They're not allowed in the elevator.
They're not allowed in the elevator. Well, there you go. Anyway, folks, whether your kids go up or down, or even back and forth, you can get a Skylight frame by going to Skylight, SKYLIGHT, frame, FRAME, skylightframe.com, and enter the code DRIVE, and you can get $10 off a Skylight frame that you can do all kinds of things. You can even communicate back and forth, because if they send you a picture, you can tap the thing, and they know you liked it. The whole 9 yards. It's interactive. Even old people, just everybody but me can do this. So anyway, the Skylight frames.
We got a lot of questions about Vince. Should I ask him now, or should we have some buffer topics in between?
Oh God, while we're on Vince's subject, let's go ahead, because I've got an email I want to read you also that's brought up something else we need to talk about. But go ahead.
This was sent in to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Pamela in Bronx, New York. Do you think Vince McMahon's marriage to Linda is genuine or more a business arrangement? It seems Vince has little time for anything else besides running WWE. Outside of business, it appears Vince does not have any other interests or hobbies. So I wonder what kind of marriage or personal relationship someone like Vince would have.
I don't want to comment in front of millions of people around the world on other people's marriages and personal lives. Even Linda has become a public figure. Well, she, spent $100 million trying to run for Senate, so she wanted to be even more of a public figure than she was. But Vince and Linda were a very happily married couple for quite some time. I don't know that they spend as much time with each other as they used to, since they have their own individual interests. But I believe it's the best thing for business that they probably never get divorced. So there you go.
Okay, very diplomatic. This next Vince question.
I don't want to go into further speculation.
I think your answer will cause further speculation, but this next question sent in to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Mark in Essex, England. Can Jim confirm or deny the rumor that Vince McMahon is awake 24 hours a day and sleeps 1 day a week?
What? No, I've never heard that, but no, that's even ridiculous even for Vince. I would say in the 90s, he might sleep 6 hours a night. But no, he never stayed up and then slept one day. No, that's because then he would be mad he wasted a whole day if he slept one whole day. He prefers to get sleep over like everything else. Just get it over with so we get back to work.
You know, Helio Gracie, I believe, lived to be in his late 90s, and he said that one of the secrets to long life was getting at least, I think, 10 hours of sleep a night. Do you think all the years of not getting enough sleep catch up to someone like Vince?
Well, see, that's a problem again, is that it would catch up to any normal human, but Vince has never been a normal human. So maybe now, that maybe he has aged into normalcy. And yeah, I would think, you would have to, he has to be getting more rest or more sleep or more peace and quiet or just relaxation now than he did then, or elsewise I don't see how he'd still be living.
This next question sent in to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Jay in San Antonio. Corny, lately there's been a lot of questions about Vince McMahon.
And by the way, Jay, are we just on such a familiar basis that you can say, hey, Corny?
Well, there was no hey, it was just Corny.
It's Corny.
Lately there's been a lot of questions about Vince McMahon. He's had a rough 2020 so far. My question to you is, who does he rely on to help him get through the tough times like this? Is it strictly family? Or does he have any close friends he can go to? Does he even have any legitimate friends?
Oh, God. I mean, you're asking me to read his mind as to how he feels about people. The only people that he is around on a regular basis are his family members, and I would think right now, I don't know where Shane is living. He's probably around or associates with Stephanie and Triple H more than anybody else in the family because he works with them. Any friends he has that he sees on a regular basis would either have to be coming to Connecticut or the various events, and they pretty much all work for the WWE also. I'm sure in the wrestling business, you consider people friends. You might not talk to him on the phone for 12 fucking years, but they're still a friend. But I mean, no, he's around the people that work for the company that he works with and his immediate family and whatever grandkids that they have these days. And that's pretty much it.
Our final question here from this Vince section of the program was sent in to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com. I can't even speak. By Travis in New York City. I grew up on the Jersey Shore, so me and my dad always took the train up to Penn Station and watched the house shows at MSG. I'm about to turn 31 at the end of April, but when I was a kid, Stone Cold was hot as shit, and he was always working with Vince McMahon in one way or another. I can't remember when I was a kid, Stone Cold wasn't beating the shit out of Vince. My dad and his friend, who brought his kid to the show as well, always thought for how jacked Vince was and how he had some basic moves in the ring at some point, he had to learn how to work in front of a crowd under a mask. Do you know where or how Vince learned to take basic bumps? My dad has been gone coming up on 4 years now, but for his sake, did Vince work under a mask? Do you know how he learned to take bumps? Did he work under a mask?
Well, no. First of all, no, he did not ever work under a mask.
You've heard that rumor, though. I mean, that was something people used to say way back.
Actually, I've never heard that either.
Vince always wanted to be a wrestler, and his father wouldn't let him do it, but he wanted to show that he could do it. So at some point, he did wrestle under a mask. I don't think it's ever been proven to be true, but it was a rumor.
No, it's proven to be false right now. No, that's never fucking happened. Unless they did an angle when it was on Raw where it was Vince under a mask at some point. Somebody's going to come up with a picture. Maybe he did, but no. Not to anonymously learn how to work. No, Vince never wrestled under a mask. The first in the 90s, in the Attitude Era, when they finally, I can't even remember what the first time he was in a ring for was. Was it Austin?
It was Austin, wasn't it?
It was Austin. Okay. I mean, they talked about it, and I don't even remember whether Vince went to the warehouse at the studio before that or after that. At some point, Vince did go and work out, depending on what the match was, a couple things with a couple of guys at the warehouse. I know Tom Pritchard helped out on a couple of occasions. He wasn't taking wrestling lessons to learn to work from scratch. It was, and obviously his work showed, he knew what this shit was supposed to look like, and he's an athletic guy. So he didn't completely look like, a fucking greenhorn, as they used to say, on everything, and he surprised a lot of people, but that's because he was going to work his ass off and do whatever it fucking took to do it right. But he more or less worked out a few things for each specific match that was coming up, just that he had to know, or that, whatever the fuck, right? A big bump or some shit like that, which is why you can tell his basics kind of suck, but at the same time, his matches were great because he was like he watched Buddy Rogers in person, for fuck's sake. He was the master of wrestling psychology, but he just had never done the shit at the age of fucking 50-something or whatever it was when he first started. So he looked green, but he got by. And plus it's Vince, so it's already going to be over because they'd never seen such a thing before. And then, after the first few years, I'd seen him do a couple of things after that I was like, I wish he hadn't gone that far. But, when you go back and look at those matches, and didn't he have one with Flair? On a pay-per-view.
Flair at the Royal Rumble and then Hogan at WrestleMania.
Yeah, so they were tearing the fucking house down, even if some of his shit looked shitty, because he knew what he was supposed to be doing, and the matches made sense, and it was Vince, and he was already over. But no, he never actually just had a match to just have a match. It was all for pay-per-view, big event, things like that.
One last Vince question here. This was sent in to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Dan in Melbourne, Australia. In the past, Jim has touched on various things Vince can't stand, won't allow in his wrestling product. Should say entertainment product. But can Jim shed any light on the style of wrestling and particular matches that Vince personally enjoys? Obviously, as a businessman, we know he likes anything that draws money, but on a personal level, did he ever talk about certain matches or programs that he loved? Or am I foolish to ever think of Vince as a wrestling fan rather than the cutthroat businessman that he is?
Well, now that question is worded that way, I remember Vince, if he liked somebody and somebody had done good business for him, and what a pro he was. Oh, he was just great. He would praise individual people, but I don't remember him past when the match would actually happen. If it was a pay-per-view match, and he's, they did a great job, just a great job, or whatever, or he would praise a match. But I don't recall him off the top of my head right now, ever saying the words, wow, I remember this great match so-and-so had, or it was a great angle, or he didn't tell stories about how much he enjoyed a great match from the past or a great angle or whatever. He would praise individual people, and he'd say a match was good if it happened on his show and he was there and he watched it. But I don't recall much fondness for great matches of days gone by, because it may not have pertained to whatever the fuck we were talking about, current business, so he didn't bring it up.
He saw Buddy Rogers live. We've all heard the stories about him riding around with Dr. Jerry Graham. Did he ever talk about the wrestlers that he saw when he was a kid?
With the exception of Rogers and Jerry Graham, and even then, he's not going to launch into fucking stories to tell. That's one thing is me and Bruce, if we were sitting by ourselves, we'd tell a bunch of fucking old stories. But Vince was not one to launch into stories. He would reference people in making a larger point. And every once in a while he'd have some fond one-sentence recollection of Dr. Jerry Graham or whatever. But he's not a fucking chit-chatter and a recollector. So you didn't get a lot of fucking stories.
All right. Well,
hey, hold on. I've got to wait a minute. Hold on here. Let me just make mention of this. Hold on. I have an email I need to read up and bring up with you. It's from Dallas, from Minnesota. The person's name is Dallas, and he lives in Minnesota. From Dallas in Minnesota. He's been a fan of mine for quite some time, particularly my contempt for shit stains, Republicans, etc. Blah, blah, blah. I started listening to the experience of the drive-thru. That being said, I've been submitting questions for the drive-thru for the last 2 years. Not once have I had my questions answered on the drive-thru. Either they get lost in the shuffle, since many people submit their questions, or I'm on a blacklist despite not having any bad interactions with you, or I got overzealous with my questions by submitting multiple questions at a time, or, like mostly everyone, my questions are kicked to the curb because Brian Last's own personal kiss-ass, Charlie from Starkville, Mississippi, must take top priority. What is Charlie the kiss-ass doing to keep his questions afloat? Does he bribe Brian, or does he have something blackmailing Brian? And why, oh why, has not a single one of my questions never even been given a chance to be read on the drive-thru?
Well, let's rectify this right now. I have found some emails here. I won't say his full name until I read this and I see if he puts it in the email, but the last email he sent into the drive-thru, for the record, December 30th, 2019. So that's months ago.
Well, he gave up.
He gave up. And here, I'll click on this one, which was sent on November 5th. The subject line says, 7th time is the lucky time. Dallas in Minnesota. Dear Jim, been a fan since I discovered you in 2016 through various shoot interviews. Your absolute hatred for nonsense in wrestling and Republicans make life better on a weekly basis. I've been sending my questions in for an entire year. 7 times to be exact. Not once have I had my questions answered on the drive-thru. Either they get lost in the shuffle, I'm on a blacklist despite not having any...
Well, that's the same goddamn email he just...
You mean he's recycling his material? I'm shocked. Anyway, I will be sending out one a week. With that out of the way, my question is this. You are rightfully pissed off at the Oklahoma garbage, but why do Vince and the WWE get a free ticket for mocking Jim Ross at every turn? What Vince McMahon did to JR over the years should warrant a tirade towards Vince, especially that Dr. Heine skit. Why does Vince McMahon get a free pass for making fun of Jim Ross?
We have tiraded that in the past. I don't know about Dr. Heine, because that was years and years ago. We weren't doing a podcast, and I didn't actually watch it. I heard about it afterwards. See, a lot of that stuff, if you sat me down and made me watch WWE from 2005 to 2010, when I don't know that I saw almost any of those shows ever, I would probably go ballistic on a fucking hourly basis. But yeah, no, that was ridiculous too. Right after JR had intestinal surgery, etc., made it even worse. But yes, here's the thing. I didn't fucking blister Ferrara for doing Oklahoma in WCW. He did it in the WWF too. That's just the first time I had seen him since the whole goddamn deal had come up. So he got an ass chewing for both companies just for being Oklahoma.
Was it him doing Oklahoma, or was it him mocking the Bell's palsy?
Well, that one was the same as the other. That's, with the droopy face and the whole fucking thing, and playing off of JR's face was the whole fucking thing. And they started doing it, him and Shitstain and, whoever else was in the writing meetings at that time with Vince would start doing it, trying to make Vince laugh. And that's how it ended up being a thing and getting on television. Because, the Finkel obituaries and other things have showed Vince will just do horrible things in public to his employees and laugh at them because, he's got that sense of humor. But anyway, no, everybody that was involved with it, but when they took it to WCW and took it to a new level and started featuring it weekly, then it wasn't as much a Vince McMahon thing as a fucking shit stain and fucking Ed Ferrara thing.
All right. Well, let's get another question from Dallas
but anyway,
here.
I was going to another question. All right.
Yeah, let's get them all out of the way.
Cut you off.
Let's get him out of the way because he's never going to have a question on the show again. This email was sent in to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Dallas in Minnesota. This is Dallas from Minnesota. And this is the 9th time I've been submitting my questions. At this point, it is getting annoying. I have no idea why my questions keep getting ignored. But hopefully this makes it to the drive-thru. My question is this. Hypothetically speaking, let's say the people at Turner weren't full of idiots and just the wrestling people run wrestling. Just let the wrestling people run wrestling. Let's say instead of Eric Bischoff, Jim Ross was chosen to become the executive vice president. How different do you think WCW would have been during the 90s, and how different would wrestling have been if Jim Ross was in charge of WCW?
Oh, good God. Just the fact they wouldn't have lost any talent, or only talent that if Vince McMahon, decided he wanted them and paid a hefty price for them, because Herd ran off Flair, Jim Ross wouldn't have done that. Herd ran off me in the Midnight Express, Ross wouldn't have done that. Herd ran off the Road Warriors, JR wouldn't have done that.
No, but this is saying instead of Bischoff, so this is a little while after a lot of that had happened.
Oh, I'm sorry. Instead of Bischoff, I was thinking the first time around. I just got it in my head. But no, then by that point, it was too late. It wouldn't have made any difference because Turner Broadcasting had started deciding that they were going to, not only pick who ran the fucking thing, but make decisions for it. So by that point, Watts came in, for fuck's sake. After Jim Herd set that fucking precedent for the first 3 years and derailed the thing, and the people had no more, even the fans who were sticking with it still were really like, they were rolling their eyes, and they had lost so many fans and run so many fans off and damaged the relationships with the arenas because the live shows floundered and they changed all the schedules and just the whole 9 yards. From 94 or 5 on, it didn't really matter who was in charge. They got lucky with the fucking, the blurred out comment that Bischoff made, will put us on in prime time, and then Turner's going to spend some money, so they got Hall and Nash, and they did the invasion angle, which you'd have to be a lunatic not to know that the WWF invading WCW was going to draw. And they were hot for 2 years, but they didn't know how they did it, and they couldn't figure out how to keep it, and boom, it was gone again. After Herd's tenure, it didn't matter who was running the company. What was happening was going to happen. And most of it was bad. They were profitable 2 years out of 12 and a half.
Okay, well, thank you, Dallas.
Thank you, Dallas, and good night. If Dallas or any of you other Cult of Cornette listeners out there who feel that you've been overlooked, that you've been sabotaged, that you have been snubbed, that you have been ignored by one of the members of this program in trying to ask your questions, and you want relief, you want justice, you want some kind of vengeance, if not retribution, then I know, Brian Last knows, he's shaking in his boots right now. Everybody knows who you should call to get even.
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. He'll sue the rest.
Boy, that music just fires me up. Arr! I'm telling you what. That'll get you jazzed up to go into court. Can you imagine, Brian Last, can you imagine being some evil large corporation or some employer that's done somebody wrong or some pharmaceutical company that's poisoned somebody? Or who knows these days, coming up maybe in the near future, if somebody has given somebody coronavirus and then the courtroom door opens on the day of the big trial and that music plays. And in one foot after another, sort of you start on his feet, sort of like the introduction of Dude Love, and then you draw back to see the whole figure of Stephen P. New sauntering into that courtroom to lay the legal smackdown on some poor, guilty son of a bitch and get your justice and get your money and get you paid. That would be a frightening sight. And only the leader of newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084, the consigliere of the cult of Cornette himself, Stephen P. New, can cast a menacing and imposing shadow like that over every courtroom in the land. And he could come in and he can lay waste to all these loopholes and these injustices that the legal system tries to throw in your way. And most importantly, as we've said many times in many ways, if Stephen P. New can't get your ass paid, your ass does not accept cash, ladies and gentlemen. So whether you or a member of your family or your friends or your social circle has been hurt, damaged, or hindered in some way by some large corporation's negligence, greed, or avarice, the man to call, as always, if you need to sue, call Stephen P. New.
888-692-8084.
Yes, I believe we have stressed this many times in the past.
Many times.
It bears repeating. 888-692-8084.
newlawoffice.com.
Undefeated against mud show wrestlers and mud show attorneys.
Well, speaking of mud shows, let's talk about the situation in Florida, Jim. We've received several questions about a recent occurrence during the Orange County Board of County Commissioners meeting this past week. It was reported on Twitter by a reporter named John Alba that a WWE employee named John submitted public comment that they're being forced to work TV tapings despite stay-at-home orders. This, of course, on the heels of Governor Ron DeSantis declaring that WWE was an essential business and allowed to run their tapings in Florida. I don't know if you've heard this. I do have some audio to play if you haven't.
Well, I haven't, and hold on while you do it. John, if that is indeed his real name, John, I've heard about this. I've not heard the audio. So go ahead and play the audio then, and we'll listen to it.
A little bit of a warning. The audio may be a little bit rough, but this is our tax dollars at work. So hold on. Here we go.
Would remind any speakers that you will have up to 3 minutes in order to speak. Mr. Rosh, are there any members of the public who...
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Commissioners. I'll note for the record we did have a number of public comment request cards that came in on quasi-judicial matters that are scheduled for land use hearings in the afternoon, and that staff's reached out to those members of the public to provide additional information and inform them of the process for public testimony. However, we did have one board appearance request form that was submitted that is not on a quasi-judicial matter, and I'll go ahead and read that into the record now. This is from a speaker named John. My employer, World Wrestling Entertainment, a.k.a. WWE, is forcing me to work the TV tapings for its weekly shows despite at-home orders for coronavirus. I am unable to speak out as I need this job, and I know I will be fired if I approach my higher-ups. Despite sanitary precautions, we cannot maintain social distancing and have to touch other people. I request the government to shut down these tapings and enforce the stay-at-home orders so my colleagues and I may follow social distancing rules without fear or repercussion of losing our jobs. The only non-quasi-judicial public comment that we've received, Mayor.
Well, there it is, Jim. That's the official comment read into the record.
I call bullshit. I call shenanigans. A wrestler didn't write that. If they're trying to give the impression it's a crew member, but I've dealt with a lot of crew members, and I don't know any crew member that would have written that. I don't know for sure. I'm not a mind reader. I just play one on podcasts. But that sounds exactly like what some indignant fan who has read and gotten into all the internet controversy about WWE being declared essential and the WWE running. We've been involved in talking about it. 18 million from Linda McMahon's super PAC to elect more of these Republican pieces of shit goes to the Florida governor who's a big Trump fuck. Linda worked for Trump. Vince and Trump just tweeted about Triple H's goddamn anniversary. So they're bros. It's all a goddamn setup work, obviously. And some, like the WWE is essential programming, or any television is essential in the middle of a pandemic, except news. That's the only essential television. But anyway, so all this has been talked about on the wrestling sites, and some indignant fan has written that and sent it in or submitted it or however the fuck it was gathered there to see if they can make a big difference in getting this evil fucking television production shut down for the good of the wrestlers. I guarantee you that's exactly what has happened. And not to say that they're not going to fucking turn everybody in the building up one side and down the other trying to figure out if it was real and promptly boot that motherfucker out the back door, obviously. But no, it doesn't sound real to me coming from either. It wasn't even claimed to be a wrestler. It was claimed to be a production personnel, right? Or did they ever make a distinction?
I'm not sure if a distinction was made, but I took it as a production person.
It doesn't sound. It sounds to me like exactly what a fan wanting to stir some shit up would write. And I'm not saying whether it's their goal is noble or not is beyond the point. I'm saying it doesn't sound real. It sounds like somebody trying to interject themselves in this thing.
Okay. Have you been following the controversy with the Velveteen Dream?
I heard that Velveteen Dream did something on his phone that he shouldn't have done, apparently, but he says he didn't do it. That's all I know.
I'll read a little bit from an article here. Several questions were about this.
Why don't, here's another thing. Somebody asked me the other day, why do you not have a smartphone? Why do the real estate agent I'm working with in Oklahoma called me 7 times in a row the other day without knowing that she'd called me, but I'm listening to her talking to somebody else. People send pictures and messages that are leaked and fucking put up on the internet or subpoenaed to go to court when people who are actively doing something that they're going to get sued over and is illegal or is going to lose them the suit are putting it in writing in material that will be subpoenaed for the case. Or what the fuck? Why do you... That's Russoing yourself times 10, sending the wrong email to somebody just because you're fucking stupid. Well, these phones, all they do is send goddamn shit to people whether you want them to have it or not.
Well, this is from an article in Newsweek by Philip Martinez. WWE NXT superstar Velveteen Dream has denied allegations that he had any inappropriate communication with a minor. Friday, Dream, real name Patrick Clark Jr., was accused of sending inappropriate photos to minors in a now-deleted post on Reddit. The alleged victim claims that the photos were sent over Instagram direct messaging and provided screenshots of the exchange. The victim claims to be 17 years old. However, their friends, who allegedly also received inappropriate photos, are 15 and 16. The alleged victim says that the exchange was from Dream's verified Instagram account and that the phone number used is from a Washington, D.C. area code, Dream's hometown. They also allege that the voice in the calls was accurate and that the picture he sent is believable. Velveteen Dream denied the allegations on Twitter. Be assured, I did not communicate inappropriately with anyone. A private photo of mine was shared without my consent or knowledge, and I am working with a third party to look into this matter. At the time of this writing, no charges have been filed, Newsweek has reached out to WWE for a statement and will update if one is delivered.
So am I to understand from all of this hoo-ha that he sent somebody a picture of his dick and either says he didn't do it or somebody else did it for him?
I think that's kind of what it is. Someone apparently received a picture of the Velveteen dick, and he's saying that it was indeed a photo of him, but he was hacked. And they're saying, no.
Wait a minute. He was hacked. Oh, I thought you meant his dick was hacked. I was going to say he's apologizing for the appearance of his dick.
The dick wasn't hacked. The dick is apparently intact. And I can't believe what we're talking about.
The hacked dick is intact.
But apparently there was also, from what I'm reading here, phone calls where they heard his voice, and that the verified account links to a Washington, D.C. phone number, which is where his home is.
What? Oh, my God. You know, I've always said if there were cell phones in the 80s, then none of the guys would, all of them would have been in jail and or none of them would have been married longer than 2 weeks. But these fucking guys today, they don't know how to cover their shit up. You don't fucking call from your, even before there was such a thing as caller ID. There were phone bills that you got on paper. You never call a girl from your house. You always go to a pay phone, and you don't use a fucking calling card in your name. If the bill comes to your house, you use fucking change and pay for it as you go along. And you definitely do not say things on answering machines or voicemails. You don't let compromising pictures be taken past a picture in a parking lot at the fucking local 7-Eleven of you and fans. And, you know, Dennis Condrey was a master. One time, his first wife, he left the house one day to go to the town about 2:00 in the afternoon. And he came back that night about 1 a.m, just like normal. Thing was, he wasn't booked that day. But he drove to where he was going, spent the leisure time there, and then on the way back to get back at the right time, he stopped by a gas station, took his fucking wrestling bag in the bathroom, wet his tights, and like he'd sweated and shit, and fucking went home and dumped them out. And boy, I'm sore. I'm going to bed. Boom, there you go. These guys can't cover their shit now for shit.
Well, also, it's one thing to cover your tracks when cheating. It's another thing when apparently you're sending these photos to someone who's underage.
Well, yes, even all the more when you want to cover that up. I'm once again, I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong. I'm saying that's something you would probably want to cover up. So I'll just use my own phone with a traceable phone number, my own fucking gimmick account, whatever. And why don't you get the goddamn evidence notarized while you're at it, just to make it easier for everybody? That's what I'm saying. Fuck. Maybe I've been wrong all along about wrestling television when I say the camera in the back that always catches people saying things they wouldn't want said in public or doing things, committing crimes. I said wrestlers are the worst fucking criminals ever. They're committing a crime with a goddamn camera on them. Maybe they are that stupid. Regardless of what you're doing, whether it's something you shouldn't do or something you legally shouldn't do, don't be a fucking idiot and just do it out in front of everybody with your own goddamn, fucking face and phone number or whatever. At least try to make some effort to be sneaky about this shit. Wouldn't you think?
Well, back to the topic at hand. Velveteen Dream, how do you think this will affect him?
Well, depending on what he did and whether he did or didn't do it, it's going to fucking probably either affect him not at all or pretty goddamn much. Because I don't think the sending of genitalia pictures to underage people of either sex is fucking something that's permissible in a publicly traded company. Do you?
No. And beyond the underage thing, just in general, what do you think about the idea that so many people, so many of the women have gotten hacked? We've seen nude photos of a lot of these women wrestlers get out. And even the male wrestlers. There was a Seth Rollins photo a few years back going around. What do you think about the idea so many people are taking dick pics? So many people are sexting each other and sending these photos around.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You're putting shit in writing one way or another. Something's going to go south sooner or later in all these deals. So, you're putting shit in writing. And you used to have to work a lot harder to take some naughty photographs. You had to find a place that would fucking develop them on the fucking, on the QT, as they used to say. And I always, as a matter of fact, I tried to bring things that would help set the fucking scenery and everything, because I had the fucking artistic background being a photographer. But there,
what? Wait, hold on.
You don't.
What do you mean, like candles? What would you bring?
Well, it just depends on the fucking the theme of the shoot. Is it the Arabian Nights? Is it fucking me, Tarzan, you, Jane, up in the tree? And you gotta get the fucking theme going. But anyway, you don't just fucking toss this stuff out willy-nilly out in the fucking parking lot or pass it out at the arena. That's what you're doing with the cell phone and all this fucking internet stuff. I prefer hard copies of pictures with negatives that have to be hand carried around and processed in various quiet locations, and then you keep things under control that way. These guys are fucking amateurs. They're just fucking flooding the world with their shit. I'm firmly in favor of naughty photographs, but not when you can accidentally be trying to fucking order a goddamn Domino's pizza and send a picture of your fucking sphincter out to the goddamn world.
All right, well, our next question here, Jim, sent in to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com, is from Justin in Ashland, Kentucky.
Ashland, Kentucky, home of the Inner Geek. I encourage everybody to go to the Inner Geek comics, whenever you can. Again.
Not to be confused with the Inner Greek.
Who did that? That was. I announced my appearance at Inner Geek Comics, and somebody said, I'm sorry I missed you at the Inner Greek.
That was me, I think.
It might have been you, yeah.
What's your
it was a noted bathhouse in Times Square, the Inner Greek.
What's your thoughts on why Scott Hall never achieved the world title or heavyweight championship? I remember the big push he had when he had his shot with Brett at the Royal Rumble, then eventually drifted to the Intercontinental spot, as well as the time he went against Sting in WCW. I always thought he should have been the main guy, I always thought he should have been the man during the 1990s, but fell short. I have noticed drugs and alcohol played a factor, but is there anything else preventing this push from all organizations?
Well, there were only two organizations that would have ever made Scott Hall a world champion, because it was either been the WWF or WCW.
Well, also, I guess he did get a pretty big push out of the gate in the AWA when he first.
Well, yeah, but he was just starting. He was green as grass, and they weren't going to put the belt on him when they had Bockwinkel and Hennig and, those guys. And then for the first, however many years he was in WCW with the revolving door of gimmicks, he was just an underneath guy. So really, when Vince pushed him as Razor Ramon, he was at a level to which he would be considered for the belt at, all things considered, but the timing was never there. It never came up before he left. Razor was not going to be the champion over the guys that were champion during the years that Razor Ramon was Razor Ramon. Then in WCW, well, the same thing is, even though he was an integral part of the NWO and Hall and Nash and Hogan, et cetera, are you going to put the belt on him when Hogan is there? Are you going to put the belt on him when Goldberg's there? Are you going to put the belt on him when Sting is there? And then that was it. He was really only, and part of it is that he didn't have to work in a variety of other territories and places or do independence or whatever, but he was never in world title contention in any other than WCW or WWF, and that was only from a period of 1995 to 2000. By the time he came back to WWE after WCW folded, that horse had left the barn. He was never going to be the champion at that point, and there you go. So it's not like he was just repeatedly turned down by everybody in the business. There was only two places that it would have even been a possibility. He wasn't over enough before the first WWF run, and he was nostalgia by the second one.
All right, our next question sent in to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Jake in Waterville, Ohio. I was wondering your thoughts on the American...
You sounded like you were questioning that, like Waterville, Ohio?
I was wondering your thoughts on the American Badass version of The Undertaker. Personal, unpopular opinion, I thought it was corny and somewhat ruined his gimmick. He's still one of the greats to me, but that gimmick was lame.
Yeah, well, the bike riding thing, right? I get they were trying to humanize The Undertaker and make The Undertaker more real, because I'm sure some fucking writers was, we need to be more real now for the Attitude Era. And I didn't despise it. I was disappointed because The Undertaker was, to me was iconic. But in hindsight, it kind of worked to make people, you don't know what you got till it's gone. How can I miss you if you won't go away? When he did that for, what was it, a couple years, to then come back to The Undertaker, it made people happy to have The Undertaker back. So it wasn't like he could go away for 2 years, but The Undertaker kind of went away for 2 years. So when he came back, that's when, to me, Undertaker kicked in even more into iconic status when he came back to being more The Undertaker after the American Badass thing. I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, remember they brought him back at WrestleMania and the lights went out, I think, and the first thing you heard was, for the first time in years, Paul Bearer do his, "Ooh, yeah!" And the place exploded and there was the dead Undertaker again.
Yeah, and so, it wasn't, the American Badass wasn't great, but at least it served a purpose of making people so happy when they got the Undertaker back.
Well, Jim, our next one was sent in. I'm going to read this one. This is one of those ones where the people think they know how to book the show better than we do.
Okay.
The subject line, Brian, this bit will get over. And now I'll read it verbatim. Our next question was sent in to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Miguel in Fontana, California. Hi, Brian. This is actually Charlie from Starkville, Mississippi, using a fake name to take a little heat off of you. Please make sure to read this question on the air, or I will stop paying you your bribe, or I will reveal your deep, dark secret to the world, whichever is our arrangement. Charlie, so apparently this Charlie doesn't even know what the arrangement is. But anyway, thanks, Charlie. Hello, Jim. As a very liberal person, I am disheartened by how many wrestlers from the territories were good old boy Republicans who hated minorities and gay people. My question to you is, were there any wrestlers who had a reputation for being liberal-minded? At this point, I'll even take an ex-hippie.
Well, first of all, I mean, obviously people of all sizes, shapes, and professions can either hate minorities or gay people or whatever the fuck it was there, but everybody just assumes that all the old time wrestlers hated minorities and gay people, I guess. The guys in the business were working with Pat Patterson or Chris Colt in the 60s, and, they didn't have that much trouble, blah, blah, blah. So I think that's somewhat cliche also, but I don't know, because like I said, until I was really, I'll say I was out of the wrestling business. I was in TNA, which is the same thing as being out of the wrestling business. And the global economy crashed under George W. Bush, who now looks good by comparison. It was when I started paying attention to politics. I never talked about politics to guys we were on the road 30 years ago because I wouldn't pay any attention because I was young and busy. And I've since then tried to rectify my mistake all these years of not paying attention to what was going on until it personally cost me a goddamn bloody fortune. And then I wanted to see what else was going on. And then I realized the President of the United States was a blithering simpleton. Some things never change. Republican president, blithering simpleton. And so, I don't know. I've been more disappointed to find out that some guys that I always liked and thought were normal actually, are Republicans than of late over the last several years than anything else. But some of the guys are still sane and reasonable and rational, and some are Republicans.
All right. Well, our next question sent in the CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Albert Bettis. During Jim's tribute to Joe Pedicino, he briefly mentioned Vader going to a Duke University weight loss study and gaining weight.
No.
The story sounds vaguely familiar, but could Jim please elaborate on that story?
It was Yokozuna. Did I say Vader when I meant Yokozuna? Did I say Vader? Okay, well then I fucked up. We were talking about I can't remember what the original question was, but we somehow got to fucking large guys. But no, Yoko. It was Yoko that went to when he the Survivor Series 96. That was Rocky's debut, right?
Yeah.
Yoko was in one of the 8-man tags. That's the last time that he worked for the WWE, because that was New York. They have a commission. Yoko weighed 802 pounds. And he was getting a step off where even the great athlete that he was when he was 600, he couldn't do that shit anymore. He was starting to, if he was a step off and landed on somebody, it fucking made a big difference, right? So Vince wanted to still use him. He was loyal to the Samoan family, and Yoko had drawn him a lot of money the previous few years, all things considered. So they sent him to the weight loss clinic at Duke. And I've told this story before, but it's been a while. Maybe for the younger viewers, since I was working in the office at that time, one of the things they had me do is once a week call Yoko and see how he's doing. Right? So I did. The first week I called him. I said, Yoko, how you doing? Oh, brother, it's great. I've lost 150 pounds. But what? Yeah, it was all fluid, which I know it can be done to some extent because they put Bolin in the hospital several years ago and drained about 85 pounds off of him in a week and a half. So, this shit can take place. But at first week, 150 pounds, but it's great. Okay, Yoko, we're proud of you. Keep on the diet. Do what they say, blah, 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 chat. Next week, oh, brother, it's great. I'm down 100 pounds. Oh, okay. Next week, oh, brother, it's great. I'm down 75 pounds. I'm like, what the fuck? He was bullshitting me at the start, but he forgot what numbers he was using. And then somehow, then the phone calls kind of went sideways. And somehow when he got out, he was either the same weight he was when he went in, or he had actually gained weight because he had figured out a way to bribe or pay somebody to slip and smuggle him in food. And so that's the point where then they let him go and let him go, released him from his contract. And then he started for a couple years doing those overseas independents and things. But it was Yoko that went to Duke. Leon, they put a weight clause in his contract. I've told you that, right, before? That finally they said, well, fuck. He used to play in the NFL. Maybe he'll understand this, because they wanted him to lose weight. He had gotten up to, I'm going to say 435 or something like that. And they wanted him at 380. And it wasn't happening. And it wasn't. Finally, when JR said one time, he described it, he said, Leon squealed like a pig under a gate when we put the weight clause in his contract. But they wanted him to show improvement by weight loss on a specific schedule and tied it to his contract. And that's not a big fucking earth-shaking thing. It's done in professional sports like the NFL or whatever in some cases, but it didn't work anyway. And that's another thing that got Leon sideways with the office. But that's where I'm trying to get Steen to lose weight in 2012 so we can bring him back and push him. And of course, it was 2011. I do apologize. When he lost the loser leave Ring of Honor match and forever hated me afterwards and squealed like a pig under a gate and just complained, etc., we said, you'll lose to El Generico. We're going to leave you off for 6 months, which at the time Ring of Honor was running 2 shows a month. So he was going to miss 12 shows. And he squealed until I got him a fucking payoff from Kerry, put him on the payoff sheet for the shows they did run for half pay, and he didn't have to leave the house. All we wanted him to do was lose 30 pounds and come back in the summertime, trimmed up a little bit with nicer fucking clothes, in a little bit better shape, And we intended to push him as the guy that had the grudge against Ring of Honor, et cetera, et cetera. And, of course, he showed up one time to do a fucking appearance of some description and had lost about 15 pounds. And the next time we saw him, he had gained that back and was about 10 or 15 heavier than when he lost the loser leave anyway, because he whined and griped at home and simpered about his horrible fate because his employers wanted him to do something so that they could push him in a more realistic fashion. Sometimes you just can't motivate a motherfucker to go on a diet, even if he's supposed to be playing a professional athlete on television.
Our next question, Jim, sent in to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com. This is one we hear from a lot of people. From Steve in New Jersey. Can you explain what exactly WWE style is?
Not really verbally, no. But they have taken professional wrestling and they've amplified certain things that Vince always likes. Always liked. It's more about the sizzle than the steak. I've talked before about how the WWE guys seem to milk things longer, and there's the facial reaction response, and the time stands still while everybody reacts to everything. They call that telling the story now, and it's just it's a style of pro wrestling. It's safer. It's more obviously dependent on working up to the big moves, although that used to be. Now, really, with the NXT guys, they don't do that at all. So now there is some element of WWE style, but it's more like just the WWE style these days is just don't do the shit we've specifically said don't do. Because a lot of the guys now do shit that they wouldn't have done in the WWE 10 years ago. Help me out. I don't know if that makes any sense, but you know it when you see it. And that's why everybody works somewhat the same way and everybody's trained somewhat the same way. Even though there's different trainers and they teach them different things, the way that they're trained to approach the match and look at the match is basically the same, and you're not supposed to do all the things that Vince doesn't like. Is that about it?
Chris Jericho in his first book talked a little bit about, or maybe it was his second book. I thought it was his first one, but now I don't remember. The experience when he first came into WWE, and he had been great in WCW, and right away Vince and Triple H may have played a part in this, soured on his work, and had him work with Sean Waltman, because he says, Sean will teach you how to work how we do here. So I guess that's my question for you. If when you were there, a guy came in from WCW, would you have to retrain them in a way? Would you have to tell them things not to do or things to change or how to play to the crowd? Or what would you tell an established guy back then who came in about how to change the way they're working?
I wouldn't do that, but then the other guys would, the agents and et cetera, because it was with Jericho. Yes, he was still a little green when he was in WCW, but they had a faster pace. It was more action. It was more legitimate looking. They would sacrifice milking something or whatever for the legitimacy of it, just a momentary diversion or something looking real. It was old fashioned NWA style, still in WCW more than it was WWE. Slow the pace down, get these points across. It's hard to explain since Jericho couldn't really explain it past that's what happened either. But, and a lot of it is doing shit, not doing shit that Vince doesn't like. But that was part of the thing is that's why so many of the matches were so similar, because even though it was different guys trained by different people, they were kind of doing the same things. I loved it when somebody came in from WCW because it was different shit. It was like back in the territory days when different guys would come in from different territories, and it would be different. They just work different. They just do different things. They didn't want that. And also Triple H and everybody else is trying to knock Jericho because, hey, here's a fucking flashy young kid. He's going to take our fucking spot. And, Triple H wasn't fucking the son-in-law yet. He was just working on it. But no, I never tried to have guys change what they did, unless something that they were doing I didn't think looked particularly good or wasn't good for them to do. I would say that no matter where they came from, I'd bring it up to them. But no, everybody else wanted to retrain guys the WWF way, or the agents would, this is the way we do it. But no, it's just let guys do their fucking shit.
Like within a few months, you had Vader come in, you had Mark Merrow come in, guys who had been big stars.
With Merrow, that's the problem. He couldn't do his shit. They bought Johnny B. Bad and they got Mark Merrow, and they were afraid for him to even look the same, because elsewise they'd get sued. And that's the only thing he could ever did in the wrestling business that was worth two shits in a fucking hand, was Johnny B. Bad. So he would have been great if he'd have done his shit, but he couldn't legally.
It was kind of like wanting Larry Bud Melman and getting Calvert DeForest. Pop Mr. Cornette there with that reference.
Very good.
Are you a fan of Late Night with David Letterman, the 1980s show before he went to CBS?
Oh yeah, no, I never missed it. If I was in a hotel or home or anywhere that I could see that show, I never missed it. And yes, I was a devoted Larry Bud Melman fan. And no, I didn't stop watching Letterman until he went to 11:30 and got a suit that looked right. And then I just, it was like, it's over.
Did you like Chris Elliott?
Somewhat, but I just liked Letterman because he was a fucking abrasive asshole, but he was also funny in that kind of fucking gap-toothed, leery kind of way.
Okay. Well, our next question, Jim.
Plus, I actually watched him on an occasion or two when he was the fucking weatherman in Indianapolis. So I remembered him.
Our next question sent in to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Jace Long. Hi, Jim.
Wait a minute. Jay Schlong?
Jace Long.
Oh, I thought you said Jay Schlong. I was going to go, how long is old Jay Schlong?
Well, here's Jace's question. What are your thoughts about Aleister Black? I think Vince may not have a thing for tattooed superstars going over into main event hype. I think Black needs to be on top of main event card. What do you think? P.S. You're the GOAT.
Hey, I'm the GOAT. I pitched to an interview segment with the Sheepherders one time in WCW when I was doing the announcing. I said, the Sheepherders, are they crazy or just drunk on Woolite? We'll be right back. Aleister Black, anyway. I know that Heyman, it's been said he's a guy that Heyman is high on. I thought when we first started watching NXT is I think when we first saw him, right? And I thought he had a lot of potential. He did some good shit. But I don't know if it's whether how they booked him or just the presentation, whatever the fuck. I found myself less intrigued by him the more I saw him than I was when I first saw him. And I'll tell you just a couple of things I remember off the top of my head. They put him in a fucking match with another one of the big schlubs. Maybe it was at Harper. Or no, not Harper. That was Brody Lee. Eric Rowan. Just a big nondescript fucking blah-looking guy that beat the fuck out of Aleister Black most of the match, and Black hit 2 of his kicks to finish this fucking guy. And the way that they've presented him, even when he wins, he's so competitive against people that you would think he needs to go out and eat somebody up and present an aura of danger and be kind of a badass. And I like the entrance way the entrance they got for him when they flip him up on the backboard where he stands up like that, like Nosferatu. Right? And then, he looks like a fucking Hannibal Lecter motherfucker, tattoos and what, and he goes and he's not put over as impressive either by winning decisively and dominantly or by having an out of control aura about his personality that he has the same kind of face that a lot of fucking independent wrestlers have when they're going through their routine. If a guy that looks like that could come off as a legitimate raving lunatic in front of a large group of people like Terry Funk, and then hit fucking high impact moves in dominant fashions and took guys down and fucking beat them convincingly, that guy should get over. None of those things has been done with or has happened from the Aleister Black matches that I've seen. Am I missing something?
I think he's talented. I thought he was used obviously better in NXT than WWE, but you could say that about everybody. I don't know. I think they need to do more to break him out from the pack.
You can't just make a guy scary because he has a lot of tattoos and you name him after a fucking dark color and a famous Satanist. He has to come off and give that aura and that impression to the people when he appears, and part of that is being a scary motherfucker that hurts some people. So if you're going to go that direction, you have to go in that direction. When you got a guy like that and you just send him out to have competitive matches and some he wins and some he loses, well, you just, and he's not particularly experienced or an over-the-top personality at getting himself over when he's in the middle of a losing effort or, whatever. I mean, does anybody actually go out and heal anymore either? If it would help me if this guy just went to gouge somebody's eyeballs out or just grabbed somebody around the neck and just fucking got on top of them and choked them and beat their head against the ground with a fucking crazy look on his face and had to be pulled off of a motherfucker by the referee. Then, okay, this guy, and maybe he likes the taste of his opponent's blood, for fuck's sake. And does fucking services, or not services, but ceremonies with it. Services, whatever the fuck. You've got Aleister Black. Let him put some fucking spells on people and take some of their fucking blood to goddamn mark the picture that he throws in the ceremonial flame and then fucking comes out and fucking chews on people's faces. Scare me with a scary motherfucker. Don't just, he looks like a guy sitting around a tattoo parlor reading a fucking paper.
Well, those kicks that he throws look pretty devastating, and I'm sure.
Yes, that's why I couldn't believe it took two of them to put the fucking big redheaded fucking clown down. Why would you let some guy fucking kick out of your fucking finish of a guy you're trying to push?
I'm sure those kicks are stiff, and I'm sure people probably need some help after a match with Aleister Black. They probably need something to apply to help them with the pain.
Are you trying to lead me in a certain direction?
I'm trying to make sure we don't forget our last spot this week.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you what, since I'm being led down the primrose path by the host of this program, I will remind you that Omax CryoFreeze works on every kind of pain except the one that I've got in my ear right now, a pain in the ass named Brian Last. But if you have a bad back, a hip, knees, arthritis, you can't go now to get adjustments, chiropractors. You don't want to, you can't keep social distancing while somebody has their elbow in your spine. You don't want to go out in public, even if you do trust the person that's going to be elbowing your spine. So this stuff you can use in the privacy of your own home by yourself. And it works just as good as those other things. The Omax CryoFreeze reduces aches and pains from sore muscles, joint overuse, aging. It's a must for muscle recovery. It improves your flexibility and long-term joint health. It contains no THC, I'm sorry to let some of you know, but it does have CBD, which is also 3 letters. And right now, for a limited time only, because we've said how good this stuff, if I could drink it, I'd feel so much better, but you can't drink this stuff, and I'm not President Pig shit. So I will say that you can rub it on yourself, whether it's the Omax CryoFreeze roll-on or the Sport Recovery Cream. It doesn't stink. It's not greasy. It gives you a nice whoof of menthol, and at the same time, it makes your joints feel warmer and colder. It's good. Go to omaxhealth.com and enter code DRIVE, D-R-I-V-E, to get 20% off the Omax CryoFreeze and everything site-wide, everything on the whole website, 20% off, because we know a guy. Don't let muscle soreness continue to be an excuse for not living an active lifestyle. Go to omaxhealth.com and feel relief faster. My mother-in-law loves it. Stacy loves it. I love it. Brian Last, you and the entire Last Manor family love it. It works, and it's easy, and it's good for you.
That's right.
Well, I'm glad you could validate my opinion.
Let's get a few more questions, and then are we going to do the watch-along here today.
We're going to do a watch along here shortly that we've got to do. I want to bring up one more thing here real quick, and then we'll do a question and we'll do the watch along. Well, no, this week's Dark Side of the Ring is on Dr. D, David Schultz, and the slap heard round the world. And I am pretty sure I will be featured in this because I did quite extensive comments on David's background in wrestling. But a lot of people are going to be talking because some people on Twitter, when the trailer was released this past week from Vice, they have not seen David Schultz slap John Stossel. This was brand new to them, to the younger wrestling fans that have not heard about this. Did you see some of them talking about it?
I did, and the clip I saw was actually, I believe it would be David's, because David's one of the only people I knew who had it, was the extended version where after he slaps him, Vince comes down the hall.
Yeah.
So it reveals that Vince was there while this whole thing was happening, which is one of the big revelations when it comes to that story for anyone who looks into it, is that it wasn't David just doing his own thing in the hallway away from everyone. No, Vince was right there. Fuji was right there.
Well, not only, Fuji was right there laughing his ass off and waiting for Schultz to slap him again, but Vince was there because, and by the way, is our talk with David Schultz up on the YouTube channel?
If it isn't, I'll make sure it is.
Well, we need to get it because we talked with him, what was it, maybe 2 years ago now, about the whole situation when his book came out. And we talked about the whole situation. What Vince McMahon had said was, David, that guy, the reporter's here, blast him, give it to him. Well, the interpretation, Vince claims that he meant a blast in a verbal way because Schultz was a fucking hell of a promo and intimidating fucker. And Vince claimed afterwards he meant blast him verbally and really give it to him verbally. But Schultz told him, hey, my boss just said go fucking knock this motherfucker out if he gets out of line. And the video was part of the lawsuit. And David has a lot of those documents and et cetera. But anyway, we will get the original interview with Schultz up on our YouTube channel ASAP. But this program will be the first time that that's been brought up and a documentary done on this whole thing since the original news reports, 35 years ago. But the reason I mentioned some of my comments, I haven't seen a cut of this, so I don't know what made it and what didn't. But to me, it was so hilarious because Vince McMahon didn't even realize what a perfect storm he had created. He said something, asked one of his wrestlers who was a big, intimidating looking, tough, badass guy to go at least intimidate a reporter. But even Vince didn't realize the sweet irony of the whole thing. A smart-ass Yankee reporter from New York was going to tell this badass from West Tennessee that wrestling was fake when this badass from West Tennessee was personally trained by Herb Welch, a shooter from the 30s. Schultz at that point was literally one of the last links to the pioneer days of the 30s and the old carnival shooters and the Welch family and the training guys to fucking work by stretching them in a barn before you smarten them up. So of anybody that would have taken the business seriously on that roster at that time, David Schultz was the one guy that was far on the extreme. And then you paired him off with his complete mirror image, this little Weasley reporter from New York who gets in his face and tells him he's a fake. Vince didn't even grip that irony. He was just using Schultz because he was a big badass looking guy. He didn't realize that Herb Welch had beat this motherfucker until he could not walk, until he had to crawl into his house every night when he'd come home to his wife while he was training him before he ever even smartened him up. And the whole fucking, the overriding policy, the one directive that David Schultz was given since the first day that he was smartened up after he'd had the shit kicked out of him and been stretched from asshole to appetite was never expose the business, never give the secrets away. So, and It was perfect, and I can't wait to see it because Schultz was a hero to me when it happened. He was a hero to a lot of the guys. Everybody popped because that was the pre-internet days. You didn't know what had actually happened and what it looked like until you saw it on TV, and he slapped the bejesus out of Stossel. Stossel needed Omax after that.
And by the way, he didn't even ask him a question. He goes, I think it's fake.
Yeah.
You know, like that's the worst way to possibly put it to any wrestler, let alone David Schultz.
And, you know, that's another thing that when everybody said, well, Rousey was just working. Ronda Rousey was just working. Well, fuck you. Once you said fake fights, you're not working anymore. You're just an idiot. And people don't understand, especially now that nobody gives a shit and all these fans are like, well, of course it's fake, silly fights and spandex. That's what it's supposed to be. Why would you ever take it seriously? Because it's, you know, we've talked about all the wrestlers and promoters that have fostered that environment to make it possible for fans to think that. But when this business first started, the wrestlers weren't fake wrestlers. They were really the best wrestlers in the world, and they figured out that they would work with each other to maximize their profits and minimize their injuries, but there was nothing fake about Frank Gotch and George Hackenschmidt, et cetera, Pasek and fucking Stecker and fucking She-Cat and whatever. They were working with each other to make money. Then when the Dano O'Mahoneys of the world and the fucking all of the attractions who were brought in, Jim Londos wasn't a wrestler. The real wrestlers looked down on those guys and sometimes double-crossed them for what they thought was the good of the business, but they still didn't expose the business itself. Even though they would privately look down on some of the actual fake wrestlers that were being put over, they knew it was because of business. And they still would never roll over on the business, would never expose their own business. And then when it gradually happened that there were more working wrestlers than there were real wrestlers in the wrestling business, it had still been ingrained that you're still fucking tough guys. You still got athletic backgrounds of some description, or you're tough enough to go through this. But the most important thing is we don't look down on each other because one guy's a shooter and one guy's not. But we never expose our business because that's our bread and butter. And that makes us look like a bunch of fucking fakes. And then the next step from that has been what we have today, which is everybody wants to be on reality television and thinks they're going to become a movie star, is just doing this for a hoot because they get to play with their friends. I prefer all those other fucking ways of looking at it before this one. But anyway, that's this week. Dark Side of the Ring, look for my face. It should be on there somewhere. On Vice at 10 o'clock Eastern on Tuesday about David Schultz.
All right, Jim, one last question before we watch the first ever 6-star match as rated by Jim Cornette and Weasel Dooley. This was sent in to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Ben in Washington. Hello, Jim. Vince McMahon said in the first quarter investor call, I guess is the word he left out here, a few days ago that, quote, I don't think we're going to be in the live event business like we were before. Do you think WWE getting out of doing house shows is a good idea? And what does it say about the state of the industry that the two top promotions either will be doing minimal house shows or no house shows altogether?
Well, I mean, you know, in a pandemic, I understand it. And I'm not saying that. I think whenever, if ever, it is safe for people to gather in large numbers in arenas and for sporting events again, yes, they need, not only does the WWE need to go back to doing house shows, but AEW better start for their own sake, not to go broke, but in a limited fashion, because that's not only is that where the guys get the experience, but that's also, it's like a rock band touring behind the record. You go out and your grassroots support is by the people who not only will watch this stuff live on television for free, but will make the effort to leave their homes and go see it in person and buy a ticket and buy some merchandise while they're there. And sure, there's a whole lot more money to be made on pay-per-view and television these days, but as we've seen, to have a great looking TV show or a great looking pay-per-view, you've got to have a big building with a lot of people in it, because that's the atmosphere. And this empty arena stuff doesn't work, and it's only going to get worse the farther it goes along. And the cinematic matches aren't a long-term excuse, a long-term choice either. And so when Sinclair Broadcasting bought Ring of Honor, the way I told him to look at it was, I said, look at this. We have to run live events. We don't have to go broke running 20 live events a month, but we have to run live events because that's how you pay the boys in large part. If you don't have a major television deal, that's how you pay the boys. That's also how the boys get experience. That's also the rock band touring behind the record. In, how many bands through the days of, modern music have you heard say, well, we toured endlessly until we built up, our fan base? The Avett Brothers now, they tour incessantly, so that, and they were a hell of a live event ticket seller. Well, back when you could do that. And that fan base is fervent. It's experience for guys that are younger, that are still just coming out of developmental. You can't get experience on Raw because everything is minutely timed and choreographed and produced and whatever the fuck for what you got to do. Get in, do your thing, get out. But if you're working Des Moines at the fucking Veterans Coliseum or whatever, you got 12 minutes. You can do whatever the fuck you want as long as you don't shit on yourself and stink the joint out. That's where you learn. So yes, there has to be live performances of wrestling for a variety of reasons. And also because, that's where a lot of all the fans that you see that were fans from the old days, they don't remember fondly the first time they saw wrestling on television as much as the first time their parents took them, or the first time they saw so-and-so in person, or the first time they got to go see blah, 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 or whatever the fuck. It's a much more memorable thing, and that's what hooked people on wrestling, was getting to go see it live. And now we've already come from in 30 years from having weekly or monthly live wrestling events in every city of any size in the country, drawing between 1,000 and 20,000 people per show, to, two companies running big TV tapings and occasional house shows and everybody else running barns. We don't need to go further in the opposite direction to where there's no live events. You can't go see live wrestling. Fuck, that would just be insane. I'm sure Vince was saying, they're not going to be in that business as extensively or as they were in the past for the foreseeable future, but I think it would be horrible.
Their house show numbers have kind of bottomed out.
Well, yeah, because who wants to see that shit, right? It's not that they don't want to see live wrestling. They don't want to see that live wrestling. If you give people a great, but the people watched Bill Watts's Mid-South Wrestling on television in moon landing like numbers in that territory, but they still went to the fucking live shows and paid to see everything live and see the big shows and see the resolutions of shit. And there's no reason why, with good talent presented seriously and a good platform, that you can't do the same thing.
Well, Bill Watts was promoting on his show feuds and angles that you would want to see what would happen at the house show. You'd want to see what would happen when Jim Duggan finally got his hands on Ted DiBiase.
Yes.
Vince McMahon's promoting superstars. You know what I mean? It's a different way of doing it altogether. People don't want to just come out to see Ringling Brothers over and over and over again.
Why do you think I've been down on sports entertainment for the past 30 years? It's not like this is a new concept. I said the same thing 30 years ago. They want to come to wrestling as a sport every fucking week. They want to come to wrestling as sports entertainment once in a while to see the show. and nothing's changed in 30 years.
Well, on that note, we should also make note that Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey were taken off the road. That no longer exists, actually.
Yeah, because people got mad at the elephants, right? About how they were treating the elephants.
That was part of it, yes. Yes. But with that, Jim, the question portion of the drive-thru has come to a close. We now have a watch-along, and this has been a popular feature. We did this for the first ever 5-star match a few weeks back on The Experience. Today, we're going to do the first ever 6-star match, and I should make a few notes about how to sync this up. The most complete version on YouTube is a video that Scott Bowden actually put up, the Kentucky Fried Wrestling page on YouTube. The title of the video is Bloody Greatness at the Gardens. The upload date is November 25th, 2017, with a video runtime of 11 minutes and 14 seconds. So we're going to do commentary over this. For those of you who are patrons at patreon.com/Cornette, we are going to put this video up with the audio commentary synced, so you get to check it out all in one instead of listening to the podcast and playing the video separately. And the video quality of the one we're going to put up will be a little bit better than the one that's currently available on YouTube, but I guess these videos all came from you. Is that correct?
Most of them that are on YouTube indirectly. I think this one, I believe it's a couple of generations removed, but it looks like my original. I still had an antenna in these days, the one that turned on the rotor and was up on the top of my roof so I could get all the wrestling shows. And when they put up the big new bank building in downtown Louisville, it put a ghost in Channel 3 because all of the transmitting towers for the TV stations in the Louisville area were over in Floyd's Knobs, Indiana, the highest point of ground. And coming out to the eastern part of the county, the signal had to go right by the bank building, and I got a ghost. But when Lance would turn around, his nose would be 6 inches long. It'd be amazing. But anyway, nevertheless, we need to start this out. First of all, everybody, first 6-star match. Oh, my God. Is it going to be better than Kenta Kobashi versus fucking whoever the fuck? No. Here's, first of all, what the rating system originally was supposed to be. Obviously, everybody knows the story. The only other smart fan in Louisville that actually, besides me, that actually traded tapes and programs and results of the matches and newsletters and joined the fan clubs and everything was my friend Norman Weasel Dooley. And Weasel started doing his own little newsletter called Weasel's World of Wrestling, where he would just type out on legal size sheets of paper the results of all the matches in Louisville and that he went to. He used to go to St. Louis. His mom would take him over there, and sometimes he'd go with me to Memphis or whatever. So he would type up the results. And then he started getting into commentary and opinion on the matches and wisecracks. And of course, Uncle Dave Meltzer has publicly admitted that that's where he was one of the 57 people that was getting Weasel's World at the time, and that's where he got this from. But one day I was on the phone with Norman, and I was reading his newsletter at the same time, but I was also, we were talking about the matches. I was also looking at the Leonard Maltin movie guide to see what was on TV that night and what I was going to watch. And I said, Weasel, the way you're going into all this detail and critiquing these matches, you ought to give them stars like they do in the movies. And he said, that's a good idea. And he started doing it, and Dave stole it, and here we go. But originally, it was just kind of a measuring stick. Like 1 star was the match kind of sucked. 2 stars was the match was kind of average, about what we expected. 3 stars was, wow, that was really good. And 4 stars was they tore the fucking house down. It wasn't anything about what moves were done or, how the booking was, because we didn't even know what booking was then. And that's why I have a better, modern viewpoint of this match we're about to watch than I did even then, because the booking was so brilliant and it was involved in really doing great business. We'll get to. But anyway, there was no. Every once in a while, Weasel might say, "Well, this match was good, but boy, that finish sucked." Or it was a letdown or whatever. But that was about it. And I didn't confer with him and debate the star ratings that he was given to matches past. We every once in a while, like with the Lawler and Funk match, after we had both seen something that was fucking wild and great and crazy, we'd come up to, wow, did you see that? Boy, and that's when we said Funk and Lawler, that has to be 5 stars because it's better than anything we've ever seen live. And 4 stars, wow, what a great match that was, but we didn't minutely break it down, and I didn't know what he gave most of the matches until I read his sheet. It wasn't even a newsletter. It was just typed pages. I didn't know what he gave Chief Thundercloud versus Plowboy Frazier and didn't care. I believe one time he gave it negative as many stars as there are in the Andromeda Galaxy. Because there was Plowboy Frazier and Chief Thundercloud, the opening match. Who gives a shit, right? But anyway, so that's the rating system. And the first 5-star match we talked about was Lawler and Funk, because basically in experiencing a match, especially live, we didn't rate matches on tape or on TV that we saw. That wasn't the same thing, because you had to be there live, because it was the crowd. Did it get over? We didn't care what it looked like in the ring. Was it exciting to watch? And did it get over with the people? And did it keep our attention like it caught everybody else's? Of course, we liked big bumps or shocking things, and you didn't get them constantly, so they were even more special then. We loved to see Lawler take the backdrop from Joe LeDuc, where he would get the ridiculous hang time of, like, you could count to 4 before he'd land, and he'd be 3 feet up above LeDuc's head. Or, you know, whatever the case, we'd like to see Billy Robinson doing his backbreaker and doing his cool shit. We like whatever the fuck. But if those moments were in a match that didn't register, make sense, or get the people into it, or get the, you know, across what it was supposed to get across, it wasn't a great match. So anyway, that's that. As far as why this was the first 6-star match, it didn't have anything to do with the match. The match, as you will see from seeing part of it, they join it in the heat. It's just a standard Memphis tag match. Bill Dundee and a Dream Machine against Wayne Ferris and Kevin Sullivan. It's what they did with the finish and what they did with the angle afterwards that kicked it up into holy shit. Because you saw not only incredible violent brawling through the building that was never done in those days, or only very limitedly done. In Louisville, they'd get away with it every couple of years. But it was put together in such a way that they hooked the people, and they kept building it and building it and building it until finally the cops were literally, you will see this on camera, carrying fucking fans that were trying to attack everybody out of the goddamn building by their arms and legs. It was amazing for the way that they put it together, and they hooked the people and the staggered run-ins and the way they built it until finally at the end, you wanted to see more, and that's exactly what they were counting on. Sort of like I said, that match with Michael Elgin and Davey Richards in Ring of Honor 2012 WrestleMania weekend, everybody went crazy over. It was the best independent match of modern times or whatever the fuck. The first 10 minutes was blasé indie wrestling. And in the second 10 minutes, they turned it on and created a fucking moment. So if I haven't already taken the piss out of the star rating system and talked and basically said how bullshit it was always to begin with anyway, I will tell you that this match became the first 6-star match and only lasted a week, because the next week was 6.5 stars when they had the 8-man tag as a return. We said, well, it has to be 6.5 because it was better than last week. And then 2 things happened. 1, we didn't want to get ridiculous and start saying 7 stars and 9 stars. And 2, they pulled back. We had seen Lawler versus Funk with this wild, bloody brawling. And then we'd seen these 8-man fiasco matches for an entire month. And they didn't want to go too far, or that would become normal, and then they'd never be able to shoot another angle that resonated again. So they drew it back. So the territory did steady business for the rest of the year, but we didn't get any more 5-star bullshit because they couldn't set expectations too high. That wouldn't make any sense. Anyway, so to set this thing up, 1981, early in the year, Lawler had come back from his broken leg. And for the first 4 months, Jimmy Hart brought all of the top rivals that he had into the Mid-South Coliseum and into Louisville and Lexington, some of the other bigger towns, to try to break Lawler's leg again. Joe LeDuc, Austin Idol, Hulk Hogan, Terry Funk, Dory Funk Jr., Jack Briscoe had been in. They had done tremendous business for several months in a row. Jimmy Hart's really come into his own as the top manager. He's only been into business a year and a half at that point. And they had done good business, but now we're into May, and the program with Funk and Lawler is winding up. And at the same time, they've lost some talent. Jimmy Valiant, I believe, has gone to the Carolinas for the summer. Tommy Rich has gone back to Georgia. Billy Robinson's gone back to Vern. Austin Idol has gone probably back home. And they were short on talent. And they had other guys coming in over the summer. Kevin Sullivan had just started at the end of April. He was a star off Georgia Television and TBS. Steve Kern was about to come in. Stan Lane was about to come in. Mr. Onita, the Onita, when he was a rookie, and the Masafucci, when he was a rookie, had just started, but nobody had ever heard of him, and they were underneath guys. They were just starting to get over. The Gibsons were going to be coming back in later on in the year, but in the May-June period, the talent was fucking thin in the territory. And Jerry Jarrett knew that he needed something to transition the month of June until he gets some other things going, and some more of these guys were going to be starting, etc. So he came up with this idea. The reason I know that he did it was because when they came to Louisville, Lance never came to Louisville, maybe once a year. And Jerry Jarrett at that point in time didn't come to Louisville that often. But they were both there that night, and they brought the camera, and Randy West was going to be filming. And the purported reason why they had the camera there, Lance even got in the ring and said hello to everybody in Louisville, all the fans, etc. Good to see you again. We've got our camera here because our main event tonight is a 2-ring battle royal, and we're going to capture that for the television program, blah, 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 right? So people, okay, but the battle royal is the big deal. So that covered that they were doing an angle that they never did in Louisville anymore, and that's why Lance was there to shoot it. And from working with Jerry Jarrett later on, I can tell that he had the personal hand in laying this out, because he did it like a really old-fashioned Southern-style wrestling match. They had started and shined it was for the Southern Tag Team title. And they shined the baby faces up first, Bill Dundee and the Dream Machine, who had been a heel when Lawler first came back, but had just recently turned on Hart and his first family and had become a babyface. And really, besides Jerry Lawler and Dutch Mantell, Bill Dundee and the Dream Machine were the only 4 babyfaces in the territory that meant anything at that point in time for selling tickets. The heels were even less. It was down to Wayne Ferris, who had been a top guy for the past couple of years. He and Larry Latham, with Danny Davis as their manager, my old partner in OVW, had been the Blonde Bombers, and they'd been on top for a while. But Larry had left the territory, gone to Louisiana. Kevin Sullivan had just come in, but at least I said he was a star from TBS. And Jimmy Hart had heat because he'd been managing all the heels. The rest of the heels for this month, they had the Nightmares, who was Danny Davis. They'd put him under a mask since he'd primarily been a manager, even though he'd been trained to wrestle by Herb Welch, same guy trained David Schultz. Nightmare number 2 was David Oswald, a kid from Arkansas that had just broke into business. They put a mask on him, said, okay, now you're a Nightmare. Fucci and Onita had just come in. They were green. And that was pretty much all that. And Chick Donovan had just started. So anyway, Jarrett laid this match out. Dream Machine, brand new babyface. They shine him and they shine Dundee. And then they cut Dream off and they got a bit of heat on him so that he could give Dundee a tag. Jarrett liked to do in those old matches, especially the 2 out of 3 falls, he'd do 2 sets of heat. Dundee gets the tag and makes a little comeback, and then they cut him off. That's where this video is going to start, where they're getting the heat on Bill Dundee. And that's something else Jarrett liked. He liked a long set of heat where the baby face would stay alive and wouldn't be completely dead and keep the people in it, but the heels would beat on him and keep him from the tag for a long time. And then finally, the hot tag would come, people would get a big blow, but he didn't want that this time. There is no hot tag in this because he wanted Dundee to be legal. So Dream Machine comes in, and at the end of it makes a little misdirection, but Dundee's legal when Jimmy Hart comes in for the DQ, blah, blah, blah. Then the heels get tons of heat after the bell where the baby faces keep trying to fight back, but they're just overwhelmed by the numbers until they start the staggered run-ins. And especially since Lawler was the biggest star, when Lawler hit, that always meant that the day was saved. That's why he hits first, because you won't hear the people, you'll hear us. But when you watch this match, as you should, with Lance Russell's commentary, he's great on the call. And also the people's reactions. That's where the 6 stars comes from. When you hear the way these people react to everything in ever increasing intensity. Lawler comes out to make a save. But so the people think that's it and they blow, but then he gets cut off. And then the heat starts again, and it goes so long, just long enough that you don't think anybody's coming to help. And then here comes Dutch Mantell, and every punch he throws, the people are going boom, boom, boom through the whole building because it's continuing. And then when they hit the ground and they start fighting, the people are really up, but they stop in the back area. And I will explain where they were. They were in a public aisleway from the time they leave ringside to when they go back past the blue folding chairs. The blue folding chairs were not set up for the wrestling event. That was behind ringside. The blue folding chairs, the nice ones, were the ones they brought out for school graduations because this was the end of May. And so the lady in the skirt with the red hair is the manager, June Johnson of the Louisville Gardens, watching these wrestlers trashing their fucking, getting blood all over their goddamn bright blue graduation chairs. The photographer that you see next to her in the white shirt trying to snap all these pictures, I don't know who the fuck he is. And when they get in the back, then they start going up in the bleachers. There was always an end section of the Louisville Gardens, farthest from the ring and closest to the dressing room entrances. Heels came out on the right side, babyface on the left side. And they just wouldn't sell general admission tickets in those sections. So they weren't open to the public, so the guys could go up there and play around a little bit, and the fans allegedly couldn't get to them. Although, as I mentioned, you'll see one carried out. They arrested either 3 or 4 in the course of this 2-minute fight because the fans were so carried away that they believed what they were seeing was legitimately happening, and they came to help their fucking favorites. They thought a riot was going on. The guys were completely out of control. So you'll see some of that. But then, as I've mentioned, fighting in the cool locations gets old quick. And so when you watch this, it's like, holy shit, this is great. But when you go back and time it, it's only a few minutes they're out of the ring, but it leaves an impact. And that's what they were wanting to do. An angle is to create interest in a match or a program, not to give them the whole thing then. Jerry Jarrett knew that the next week he was coming back with a goddamn 8-man tag match between all these guys in this brawl as his main event. So he didn't want to give them the whole thing. He didn't want to give them the resolution. He wanted to give them the trailer, the movie trailer that made this fucking movie look like it was the most exciting thing ever. And that's what this angle is for the match that would happen the following week. And then that match, because it's the first match of the program, better be a great one, because you're setting the tone. Now, if you've done an angle that has piqued people's attention and they come to see the match and the match sells tickets and they're really up for it, if it's a shitty match, they don't want to see it again. And you want to bring it back for the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever. So instead, you make the first match the best of the bunch. And then as long as it draws, you make each match as good as you can to keep drawing. But that's why in those days, the blow-off match, the last one, was often the least of the entire program, because that's the last time you were presenting that match. And as long as the babyface went over, people were going to be happy. So you didn't need to kill yourself, because you weren't going to sell that again the following week anyway. It was going off the menu. That's why everybody that was wrapped up over the last Battle of Atlanta was so let down, because that was the blow-off of their program. They'd done all the wild, bloody, death-defying shit in the world to build up to that point. But then it was done. And the match that was afterwards, what was it, Ole and Paul Ellering, was better because that's the direction they were going. So anyway, with all of these things said, it was a Southern Tag Team title match. They're getting heat on Bill Dundee. Referee Paul Morton, Ricky Morton's father, is the referee. And I guess should we start it?
Well, I guess we should note for everyone who's going to watch along with us with the video that's currently on YouTube. And once again, you can watch along with us. The video and the audio sync together. Patreon.com/Cornette should be up within the next day or so. But what we're going to start, our starting point will be pause your video right after Lance Russell, sitting at the desk with Dave Brown, says, "Okay, no more to be said." After the word said, that is where you pause your video. We'll pick it up from there. We'll give everyone a couple seconds right now to get that ready. Jim, are you ready from your end?
I think I'm ready. You want to give us a countdown?
Well, you may want to make sure you lower your volume.
Yes, I've muted the volume for us. But once again, please go back and even watch this first with Lance's audio and the crowd audio, and see by the end of this thing how batshit the people are going. And then watch our analysis of it. It might even be more educational.
All right, we're going to count down from 5 and then press play. Once again, we are beginning right after Lance says, "Okay, no more to be said." 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And Lance sitting there you see right on the right side of his shoulder, there's a ghost. Anyway, okay, Wayne Ferris. Dundee's already bleeding. They are up in the press boxes with the camera because they were nominally shooting the 2-ring battle royal, and that way they could get to the side of it, but they wanted to be able to shoot this from up high. And Wayne Ferris has a chain. They've already been using a gimmick on I think that's how they busted him open, on Dundee. And of course, Kevin Sullivan keeps trying to draw Dream in so that the referee can get him out and the heels can cheat behind the referee's back. Jimmy Hart down there with the cane. He was always so frantic. Remember, Jimmy has been in the business now a little less than 2 years as of this point. This is May 26, 1981. And he was, after only, a year, thrust into the top main event heel spot, right? So Jimmy, you'll see, just goes crazy later on in the finish, but that's what got heat on him, was he was just such a fucking ball of energy for evil purposes. Anyway.
How many of these people in the front row do you know?
Well, I knew by sight every single one of them. They were the same ones every week, but it's not like we called each other on a regular basis. The side that the camera is on, this side would have been the side me and my mom used to sit front row on. And I knew a number of those folks. Anyway, Wayne Ferris had been, at this point, pre-Honky Tonk Man, had been a member of the Blonde Bombers, as I said, with Larry Latham. They'd been champions, so everybody knew he was Lawler's cousin, but they also, he had come into his own at this point. Sullivan was a star off TV. Boom. When you listen to the people here, just when Dundee rolls out of the way and has a chance to make a tag, the people pop and come up. And, of course, that was another Jerry Jarrett philosophy. The babyface has to sell and walk across broken glass to get to that fucking tag. And every time Dream will come in and try to help, the referee will put him out. Look at Dundee's body language. He'd stagger when you hit him. He'd put his hands up like he wanted to fight, and then he'd dish rag out. He didn't just take the same kind of bump over and over. You felt him, especially when the people could see him at ringside, see the blood on his face. See, often he would when he was reaching for the tag, he here, calling to his partner. Anyway, but watch this, out of nowhere, boom, that's Dundee's finish, his Hail Mary. He didn't get a comeback. He just got to Paul slow with the count. But goddamn, the people popped just on that. He's still alive, but he can't get the fucking pin, can't get the tag.
Sullivan in fantastic shape here.
Sullivan was doing competition bodybuilding at this point. What was it? A year and a half later, he'd probably be 300 pounds, but he had ripped down to like 190 and had 3% body fat because he was in bodybuilding competitions right here. And see, Dundee, he would stay in the game. He would suddenly start swinging back, and then he'd get stopped from behind. And once again, this Hail Mary shoot off, and watch, he's not looking. Oh, he's disoriented. There's a double knockout the way it's supposed to be, not standing staring at the guy that's coming at you. But now the people, look at the people, the kids in the front row. They just want Dundee to get the tag. And when Ferris misses, boom, again. Oh, no. But once again, Dundee's bleeding. He's laying there. This is not rocket science, folks, and it's not complicated. And because in the context, all these people were viewed as stars to this audience. Now look at these. There's one live one for every two. Fucking hell, poor Wayne.
Those punches are great.
And Dream comes in to cut off the other heel that's attacking Dundee, but Dundee's still legal. So Dundee goes the corner. He can't find that. Jarrett loved to throw little Eddie Graham touches like that in there. Now see, fucking Wayne has fucking kicked him out and he's got the chain. But Dundee ducks the chain. Wayne has dropped the chain. Where is it? Oh my God. It's there. And now Dundee's got it. And this kid over here is going to have a fucking baby behind Jimmy Hart reacting to Dundee's got the fucking chain. And he's going to milk it, and boom, and that hurt. I guarantee you that one hurt. And that was okay. Now Wayne's going to get a little sauce. And now look at Dream just tattooing. Now it's starting to get out of hand. But Paul's still trying to get the illegal fucking guys. Dundee wanted probably Ferris to get his color first, and now he's on top of him. Boom, boom, boom. And now he's turned his back on Jimmy Hart. Here's Jimmy's spot. And Jimmy, 1 out of every 2 of Dundee's fucking punches was a potato. 1 out of every 2 of Jimmy's cane shots was a potato. The other one looked horrible. And then the second one hurt. And then boom, boom, boom. But now the disqualification, nobody gives a shit. It's a DQ. Nobody's booing the disqualification because they didn't have a clean finish. The heels manager came in and cheated. So, of course, they should lose this match. But now these guys have already been going 20 minutes. And now they've got to have this fucking fight until Jerry Jarrett in the back decides that they have got it, the fucking temperature in the building where he wants it to be. So they have no idea when the run-in is coming. That's in the old days. When you want to send the fucking run-in, well, let's feel it. So Jerry was going to feel it. So the job of these heels is to beat the shit out of these baby faces until that happens. The job of the baby faces is to act like they're in a fight and not just die and keep alive. But the people right now are fucking somewhat rumbling, but they're up, but still for the next fucking 45 seconds or so, they're just like, what the fuck's going to happen? And it goes on. And now they're tearing up Dream's mask. They're tearing the fucking mask off. And I think he's got some color too. You can't see because it's dark and it's video. But Dream's mask is torn. He's bleeding. Dundee has come back a couple times. Here comes Lawler. And now the people are going crazy. And Lawler starts swinging. Now the people, somebody to save the fucking day. And that was a nice one too. That shot on Wayne. Jimmy trying to stay away from that shit. And look at the body language. He's got the cane. And he's going to go nuts with that fucking cane. Boom, 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 and the people are going fucking crazy. But here come the nightmares. Shit, the other guys in Hart's stable. Wait a minute, we didn't count on this. And now you hear the people. The tone changes. Now there's 2 more fucking heels. Even if they're not goddamn top guys, it's now 5 against fucking 3, right? So people are fucking upset again. And look at Jimmy. Now they got to kick it in because now they know they have to get some fucking heat because they know Dutch is coming. And they got to get as much heat as they look. Dundee says, fuck it, I'm going to stay alive a minute. Somebody, there you go. He probably said to Jimmy across his shoulder, stop me, because he always liked to get stopped from behind, like any babyface should. And then he'd go down like a fucking sack of wheat. Got to have some powder. Let's blind some motherfuckers while we're at it. And listen to the people now. It's just chaos. And they don't know how the fuck that these guys are going to get out of this, because these heels ain't stopping and Paul Morton ain't going to make them. And they think if Lawler's come out, there's nobody else coming. He's the guy.
Which one of those two rings was the regular ring in Louisville?
The one that they're in now. The other one was a shitty one. That's why they're not using it. The Nightmares, by the way, like I said, I'll tell you in a minute. Well, here comes Dutch. Listen to these motherfuckers. And now just listen to the people. Well, you can't now, but go back and listen to it. And he's like, I'm just going to hit every fucking body. Danny Davis just took the bump over the top because he was like, I guess we're going now, but Dutch didn't stop coming back, so Danny fed some more. And now as Hart tries to get into it again, Lawler's back up, Dream's back up, Dundee's back up. They start pulling back wide. The people are going crazy now. And right about this time, Lance says, look at the scene in the Louisville Gardens. That became my code on OVW television when I was the announcer to Danny Davis, who was back there as the director, when I wanted to go to a wide shot. Look at the scene in the Davis Arena. Here they go down. That's the heel aisle. That's the direction that the heels go to the locker room. Dutch into the fucking railing. They're still in front of the people here. The cops were not amused because they didn't like that shit. There's there's June Johnson in front of the blue graduation chairs with her walkie-talkie because they don't know this is coming. The people at the Gardens were smart that it was a work because they had to be, but they didn't know what the fuck was happening from one moment to the other. Dutch swinging. Here comes Hart with a big jump, and then he got 6 inches off the ground. So the sandbag with Kevin Sullivan. People were thinking, this is fucking it. They've gone too far. They've say what you want, but this is real. They've gone into business for themselves, however you wanted to phrase it. They had managed to convince these people with the escalating run-ins and the escalating level of violence that they were never allowed to see like this, that this shit had gone too far. Here goes Lawler, backwards down the fucking steps and watch him bowling ball Dundee, and Dundee just goes with it, boom, and down. And any old minute now, you're going to say, well, who's that Dutch with Danny over in the first? No, Danny's going to take the slam on the ground right here. Boom. Here goes, that was Patterson, the cop. They're going to get somebody that's tried to come over and attack one of the guys. And you'll see here in about 10 seconds, they're going to carry this fan with a full Nelson. Yeah. And by the leg, and the uniformed ushers, they took the other ones out the other way. Like I said, they got 3 or 4 of them out of this. And now it's starting to wind down. The fucking heels run, stagger, fight. See, this didn't take but 2 minutes, and it was chaos the whole time. Nothing was pre-planned and set up, and they fought in the environment rather than building things with the environment to put each other through as a stunt. On the left-hand side where the blue chairs are, and the rest of this is Lance and Dave, I guess we can pause that now, but where the blue chairs were, they often had a stage set up, which they did the following week for the 8-man tag. They had this, I've talked about the stage. It was about 5 feet high, and it was a movable, portable stage that stretched across the end of the Gardens, and there was about 5 or 6 feet in between the back of the stage and the wall. And that's where Lawler would every couple of years take his fucking George of the Jungle bump, where the heel would run him the length of the stage. He'd go off the back of it, hit face first, suspend himself face first against the wall in midair, and then drop to the floor. Sometimes they would use the environment, for shit like that. But anyway, because of the pandemonium that they stirred up in that building, because of the response they got, because of the fact that the cops were literally carrying people bodily out of the fucking arena, when everything got settled down, and nobody expected that, and it wasn't even the last match. We didn't know at the time what Jared had planned. Me and Weasel just looked at each other and said, that was the goddamnest thing we ever saw. But in context, the following week, it made sense. The main event was an 8-man tag team match. Jerry Lawler, Dutch Mantell, Bill Dundee, and the Dream Machine against Wayne Ferris, Kevin Sullivan, and the Nightmares with Jimmy Hart, 2 out of 3 falls. And we said, holy shit, the angle had the desired effect. Because everybody said, well, shit, that was crazy. We can't wait to see what's going to happen. And 2 out of 3 falls, holy fuck. So here's what they did, just from the Weasel's world of the time. That this was June 2nd was the following week. Listen to this card. I told you talent was thin, right? This was the entire card for the Louisville Gardens that drew somewhere around 3,500 to 4,000 people. Nightmare number 1 substituted for Roger Howell and pinned Tim Leonard in the opening match.
Oof.
Yeah, Tim Leonard was a trainee, lasted about 3 months. Sonny King beat Cowboy Jim Dalton in 9 minutes. And Weasel mentions during the match, the top rope broke, which was the only exciting thing to happen in the whole match. Match number 3, Chick Donovan defeated Roy Rogers, Tommy Rich's cousin, Roy Rogers, defeated Chick Donovan by disqualification. That was the entire undercard. And then they had the 8-man tag. They had each of those matches went 10 minutes, and then they had a 15-minute intermission. And we're like, well, boy, this better be fucking good. Me and Weasel both, right? And by the way, Weasel Dooley was the only other smart fan in the Louisville Gardens, right? The only other one that traded programs, got results from anywhere else, traded videotapes, whatever. All the other fans traded pictures of their favorite wrestlers. So me and Weasel are the only, we're kind of looking at each other in the intermission beforehand is going, fuck, it's 8:45, right? This fucking match went almost an hour all in. They sent the fucking heels out, and they waited in the ring forever and got people and started yelling at people and got them pissed, and the babyface didn't come. Finally, the babyfaces come through the fucking side door, and they jump into the fucking ring, and they hit a goddamn 8-way, and they start brawling in the aisle and in the back and back and forth. There's 2 in the back of the arena and 2 in the ring and 2 at ringside or whatever, and they fight for fucking 10 minutes. And then they ring the bell. And then they do the first fall, and they get a little heat, and they get a little comeback, and they do a disqualification on the heels in the first fall. And then they fight during the rest period, and then the bell rings, and they do a second fall where they disqualify fucking baby faces. And then they keep fighting, and then they do a third fall where they get some fucking blood, and they get some juice, and they fucking start going crazy, and they're all over the goddamn place. And finally, they... I've got it here somewhere. But basically, the Hart came in and used his cane, and the third fall, the heels got disqualified. And then they all fucking fought through the building for the next 10 minutes, including about a 13-foot drop that Danny Davis took off of Lawler from the fucking bleachers. And finally, it knocked some shit over, broke whatever that they felt like that they could pay for. And finally, the final bump was Sullivan grabbed Lawler and ran him across the stage, and he did his fucking face first into the wall, George the Jungle bump. And as he dropped there, the rest of the fucking baby faces chased the heels back into the locker room. And we said, well, fuck, that was better than last week and more of it. So that's got to be 6.5 stars. And the whole thing lasted, like I said, almost an hour. So the people were fucking blown away. And they came back the next week to see the fucking 8-man tag, no disqualification. And they did that 2 weeks in a row. In Louisville, at least. They had a few other things in Memphis. But in Louisville, they did 3 weeks, 4 weeks in a row of 8-man tag matches, and they all fucking drew because they were so crazy. And then by that time, the new talent had come in. They had some offshoots, some different things going on. Some guys were starting. Fucci and Onita were a little bit more over. And they pulled back, and they didn't have any more fucking arena brawls. Because if they'd have done it more than that, it was hot-shotting. And if they'd have done it too long, it would have killed their business instead of helped it. So they got through a 4-week period where they had literally 8 guys in the territory that they could put in a main event match, and they did business with it. Not only that, but if we go back to the Memphis Wrestling History Book, 1970 through 1985 by Mark James, I promise I give him a plug. What they did in Memphis was a little different than in Louisville in that they did an 8-man tag match 2 weeks in a row, and then they went to Sullivan and Ferris against, I think it was Dundee and, Kern and Dutch, because they'd introduced Kern by that point. And then they did another 8-man tag for the winner to get a dream match, because that's when they introduced the dream matches. But the way that it all shook out in Memphis on June 29th was the card of dream matches. And I was there in person and went to that because of it was so fucking cool, the concept of it. They had teased that the winner of the 8-man tag match the previous week would get whatever match he picked, his dream match, right? Well, that didn't work out too well for the guy, so they did an entire card of dream matches. Wayne Ferris got a dream match, was a single match between him and Roy Rogers, where he thought he was going to fucking just kill Roy Rogers. Kevin Sullivan got a dream match, which was a 6-man battle royal with all the members of Jimmy Hart's first family and Dutch Mantell. So they were going to kill Dutch Mantell. One of the Nightmares got a dream match, which was a no time limit, no disqualification handicap match against the Dream Machine, where the Dream Machine would have to unmask if he got beat. Dutch Mantell got a dream match, which was a match with Kevin Sullivan with Jimmy Hart barred from ringside. Dream Machine got a dream match, which was no time limit, no disqualification. The Nightmares would unmask if Bill Dundee and the Dream Machine beat the Nightmares. And then Lawler's dream match was no time limit, no disqualification, a lumberjack match with Jerry Lawler one-on-one with Jimmy Hart. So out of the 8-man tag and the issue that you just saw that they started in Louisville, the end of May, by the end of June, they had basically bridged the month of 8-man tags where they didn't have any talent, and they had created all these issues and stories in between these fucking guys to where they put this card on in Memphis and drew 10,129 people on the 5th Monday of the month of June and the second to last day of the month to see this card. And then the brilliance was every single person's dream match backfired except Lawler's. So he pissed the people off through the whole night. Kevin Sullivan's dream match battle royal backfired because the first thing they did when they rang the bell was Dutch Mantell jumped over the top rope and eliminated himself. And it left all the first family standing there with their dicks in their hands. But then others actually had matches, but in the finish somehow, the guy who asked for the dream match ended up getting screwed, whether it was the heel, he got screwed, the babyface, he got screwed, whatever. And then finally at the end of the night, Lawler beat up Jimmy Hart, got juice on him, and allegedly broke his fucking leg. Because he had to, because they'd drawn 10,000 fucking people. And in the main event, the babyface was not going to get fucked. And then they turned around and fucking did angles off of those dream matches underneath with all the rest of the people for another month. And brought Jimmy Valiant back from the Carolinas to team with Lawler against the Dream Machine, who turned back heel and joined Jimmy Hart's stable, and Bugsy McGraw. And a month after that, they drew 11,600 to see Bugsy McGraw and the Dream Machine against Jerry Lawler and Jimmy Valiant. In 1981, the Dream Machine was in the main event of 4 different sellouts, I believe, in the Mid-South Coliseum. Anyway, so now we can look back, and I mean, all summer they were from the card that I gave you in Louisville, and it wasn't much better in Memphis. Memphis lineup of June the 1st was Sonny King versus Roger Howell, Plowboy Frazier versus Jim Dalton, Tojo Yamamoto versus Coco Ware, Tim Leonard and Chief Thundercloud against Onita and Fucci, Chick Donovan against Roy Rogers, Bill Dundee against Stan Lane, and the 8-man tag with Dundee working twice. The end of the month, they draw 10,000 people, and they follow that up weekly with drawing 7,300, 8,200, 9,200, 9,600, and finally selling out for Valiant's return at $11,600. That's booking. And that's what doing just enough to get people's interest, but not so much that they don't want to see it anymore, does for professional wrestling.
When was the 81 Tupelo concession stand brawl?
That is a good question. Hold on. Let me go back to the page I just closed. It was somewhere in September. Wait a minute. I know what, yes. Well, there you go. I was right. Because the main event at the Mid-South Coliseum, over the top of Handsome Jimmy Valiant and the Dream Machine for the Southern title, was a grudge match with Onita and Fuchi against Ricky Morton and Eddie Gilbert. And that was done specifically because Jarrett wanted to try to make these four young guys, but especially the two young baby faces, look like main event guys. They did that fucking angle and beat the shit out of each other, so they got the main event spot. And having said that, they drew, according to the newspaper, 7,371 people. But to be quite honest, Jimmy Valiant and the Dream Machine for the Southern title and a 14-man battle royal with the loser getting his head shaved probably did as much for the house as the tag match. Because even though it was the best Tupelo concession stand brawl, it was also the third one in 2 years, and people had seen it and they didn't buy it anymore. It wasn't real. It was still real, but it wasn't the first time. They weren't shocked by it. It was like, oh, well, they probably saw Lawler and Dundee do it, and that's where they got the idea to take them in there and beat the shit out of them in the concession stand from Lawler and Dundee. You can't do an earth-shaking angle that reminds people of other talent that's not in it. So that's why the first one saved the territory, and the second and third one didn't move the needle at all when it came to business.
You know, this started as a watch-along and ended up really being a deep dive into the beginning of 1981 in Memphis. Well, it's fascinating stuff.
But see, that's the thing is if it's not a deep dive, you can't critique the performance because you don't know how people felt about the talent at the time that the people in the building that they were seeing them. Were they stars or were they underneath guys? You don't know how they were being presented. You don't know what came before it, what the reasons were for the incident, and what happened afterward, and what effect it had on business, unless you see what was happening beforehand, how it was set up, what the purpose was, and how it affected things afterwards. And about once a year, maybe it was because they'd switch off every 6 months or so. Lawler would book 6 months and Jarrett would book 6 months. But Lawler would hotshot more than Jarrett would. Jarrett would hotshot when it counted. Lawler would have 40 guys on the card in Memphis and 10 matches. And they'd divide the same amount of money up between 40 guys instead of 20. But Jarrett would only hotshot to get business back and only do it as long as he had to before he pulled back on it so he didn't go too far. And in the summer of 79, or late spring at least of 79, when Robert Fuller went back to Knoxville and took a lot of the talent, he does the original Tupelo concession stand brawl. And by July, from May, they've tripled business in the territory. In 1980, he was given a bad hand when Lawler got the broken leg, but that's when he made the decision to not only make Jimmy Hart the focal point of the heel side, but also to bring other people in to do things that would set shit up for later on and set up the Billy Robinson as the CWA champion well, so at least Lawler would have something to win when he got back. And then in 81, when he's got, the first month of summer, which was traditionally the best period of the year in the Southern territories, he ain't got any talent. So he shoots that, and he gets across to the other side until other people come in. In 79, he brought Fargo in. In 81, he brought a whole new crop of guys in and continues those things to keep interest, but he doesn't have to go crazy and fucking hotshot on a continual basis. And even if in those days, obviously, they didn't have the option. You didn't know when you were going to sell out the Mid-South Coliseum. You did a strong angle with top talent. You hoped for the best. But in some cases, in those days, the old-time promoters, and Sam Muchnick was noted as doing this, if he had been hot for a while and sold out a number of shows in a row or did big business, he deliberately cooled it off. He booked a lesser card, or he booked something that he knew that, you know, would draw a half a house, but just to calm the people down a little bit and just to not increase expectations, and then build something else for later on rather than trying to just hot shot it until you fucking wore it all out. So there were numerous times, and I've seen that. I don't know whether it was purposeful or not, but I've seen that in different time periods over the Tennessee booking where it was almost like they'd cool something off on purpose. And especially after Lawler and Dundee in 77, when they did what, 2 or 3 legitimate sellouts and 10 or 11 or 12 weeks of strong business, they followed that up with Lawler retiring. He retired for 6 weeks. It was a play on Elvis dying. They wanted to switch him babyface. You know, when you got a guy drawing that much money, but he's a hometown guy, I can see where the temptation was to switch him babyface too, and people were starting to like him. But you couldn't just do it instantly, so they cooled off the territory for 6 weeks to build for his return, that then started drawing money again. Now, unfortunately, when he broke his leg, they cooled the territory off for 11 months. That was a little too long. But you can't just, well, like Shitstain once said to me, well, if we do it right, business will never go down, which was the stupidest thing that one of the stupidest people in the world ever said to me about the wrestling business. It's always going to go down for some reason. Something's going to happen. The idea is not to make it go down on purpose with shit you did or were in control of, but it's always going down. The real art is when it went down because of shit beyond your control, getting it back up with shit that is in your control. That's the art of booking wrestling. I have no end for this bit, so I will end there and take a small bow.
Well, good job. That was a fascinating history lesson. And of course, you could see the video with the audio synced up, patreon.com/Cornette. And thank you to everyone who has become a patron of the Jim Cornette's College of Wrestling Knowledge page. Lots more content coming up. Once you stop ordering.
You know what people are going to say? You know, but there was no moonsault. There was no moonsault. Oh, and with the other thing, it looked like he botched it. He botched it.
No!
Botched it. No!
He botched it! There were no one in the stands where he fell down!
Yeah, you know what? Because the one guy botched the one move, and the finish sucked because it was a DQ. That's why those fucking 4 guys got hauled off to jail, because they saw it was bullshit right away.
Well, the proof is in the pudding. The results are out there for how good that program did.
As we said one time, as I said on Atlanta TV when we beat the Horsemen and had the world belts and the U.S. belts, they said the proof was in the pudding. Well, we got 40 pounds of gold pudding right here. All right. Good day.
All right. Well, we will not be doing a song this week. We'll return to the songs next week. And thank you to everyone who has sent in a song in the last week. Send yours in today, either MP3 or an unlisted YouTube link, CornyDriveThru@gmail.com. You can follow Jim on Twitter at @TheJimCornette. You can follow me on Twitter at GreatBrianLast. Hear me on the 605 Superpodcast, 605pod.com, or available wherever it is that you find your favorite podcast. Of course, patreon.com/Cornette. Each and every Sunday night, new episodes go up. Not new episodes, but old episodes. Old is new again.
If you haven't heard them, they're new to you.
That's right. We go through the archive, putting up drive-through and experience episodes. We are now in the spring of 2014. Check it out today, patreon.com/Cornette. Don't forget the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this show, perhaps you want to share clips from it with friends of yours. Go to tinyurl.com/official corny YouTube, or just go to YouTube and search for Jim Cornette for clips, full episodes, and omnibus collections. The official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. I'm guessing I'm not going to plug what I usually plug here at this point.
Don't plug it. Remember, JimCornette.com will still be up, but Cornette's Collectibles will be closed for renovation from May 1st through the 14th so that we can fill everyone's orders. We appreciate your patience. We're doing it every day, and we're going to continue to do it for the first 10 days of May. We're sending everything out as quickly as shit can be shipped.
Don't forget, if you need to sue, call Stephen P. New, 888-692-8084. Get even with Stephen at newlawoffice.com. But until Friday on The Experience and next week here on the Drive Thru, this is a long one. For Jim Cornette, I'm the great Brian Last. Tally-ho!